some areas, again, I think just like totally gone.
There will come a point where no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for sort of personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything.
Everybody in the world is now a programmer. This is the miracle. This is the miracle of artificial intelligence.
Will we still need humans?
Not for most things. We'll decide.
In the next year, probably, maybe half the development is going to be done by AI as opposed to people, and then that will just kind of increase from there.
Look, despite what Elon and his Silicon Valley fan club keep saying to sell their toys, AI won't steal your job. But the developer next to you, who integrates AI into their workflow while you're ignoring it, just might. The industry is evolving fast. Writing code isn't enough anymore. You need to understand the future and master the tools shaping it. Because best devs aren't rejecting AI. They're using it to improve their skills. So if you ever feel everything's moving too quickly and worry about being left behind, you're not alone. And I've got you covered. I'm Adrian, and welcome to my first ever AI-assisted development masterclass, where we'll build a Nike-level, full-stack e-commerce platform from scratch with the help of Devin AI, the smartest AI engineer out there. Throughout this build, you'll master the best prompting practices for optimal results, creating clean, production-ready code, identifying where AI excels and where it falls short, and combining your skills with AI to code faster, smarter, and better. In the next few hours, you'll build and deploy a billion-dollar e-commerce site at lightning speed, including full authentication with social logins and email verification, a sleek, modern landing page with promo features, dynamic product listings with advanced filters, sorting and variants, beautiful yet streamlined detailed product pages, persistent shopping cart for guests, Stripe-powered checkout, and of course, all of it will be fully responsive with a scalable codebase. This isn't just another copy-paste tutorial. We're building robust database schemas, secure authentication flows powered by Better Auth, and scalable architecture prepared for multi-brand stores. The stack? Next.js, TypeScript, Drizzle ORM with Postgres, TailwindCSS, Zustand, and Devin AI as our co-engineer. You've heard the hype, the skepticism, and even the outrage.
Currently, the only thing that Devin can do is bang out crappy little demos.
I will pile drive you if you mention AI again.
But enough talk, because now is the time to use it. In the next couple of hours, you, me, and Devin will build what normally takes weeks, maybe even months. You'll witness firsthand where AI flies through tasks, and also where it flops, and how a skilled developer, that's you, can fill those gaps. This isn't just some AI magic show. It's a coding masterclass with strategy, speed, and real-world skills. You have my promise that by the end, you'll be able to ship faster, build bigger, and outpace those developers that are still coding like it's 2020. Let's master it together. So, can AI really build this entire application on its own? You already know the answer, but let me demonstrate. I'll prompt the AI to build a full e-commerce application. Let's say something like, develop a complete full-stack Nike e-commerce website using Next.js, Drizzle ORM, Postgres, Better Auth, TypeScript, and TailwindCSS. And as you can see, it's doing a lot of thinking, and at the end of the day, it actually provided me with a valid zip folder. But hey, let's open it up and see what's within it. There are some files and folders that resemble a real application, but if you try to go ahead and run it, you'll run into a lot of errors. Error after error after error. So if you're a vibe coder who hasn't learned how to properly code and fix those bugs, it's not going to be easy for you to just build something using AI. And hey, if you're a real developer, it also might take some of your time to go through all of these bugs. But I should be fair. We need to give it another shot and ask AI to build just the landing page, because the initial prompt was far too open-ended. So let's say something like build a Nike e-commerce landing page. And as you can see, this is pretty funny. Nothing to be scared of. These landing pages aren't looking that good. And this is exactly where developers still have the edge. All you have to understand from this is that AI can code, but it can't architect a solution unless you tell it exactly what to build. If you skip that step, you end up with spaghetti code, random folders, and an app you can't even run, let alone maintain. So let's start with sketching the system first. And you might wonder, why are we using Devin and not some other AI tool? Well, if you heard about Devin before, you already understand the hype. It is the first fully autonomous software engineer companion built by Cognition Labs. Most tools out there are just helpful assistants, but they wait for you to guide them. But Devin is independent. It can plan, write code, debug, and even deploy on real-world projects. Usually when you run into a problem or need help, you turn to an AI tool, explain the issue, give it the context, even give it a code snippet, and then paste it to your project to test. And if it doesn't work, you tweak it and try again and again and again. But with Devin, it's a whole different game. Just tell it what needs to be done, and it'll refer to, read, and understand your entire codebase. Build a step-by-step plan, write clean and structured code by following linting and coding standards. It'll even run the build, fix the issues it encounters along the way, write tests if needed, and finally push the code and open up a pull request for you to review. So Devin isn't just a smart chatbot. It is a full-stack AI engineer companion with a built-in Linux terminal, code editor, web browser, and a memory of what it's learned. It also reads docs, installs packages, and it's always up to date, so you won't be working with old packages. Now, another thing that I found super interesting when exploring Devin is that it isn't just here to automate tasks. It also teaches you how to collaborate. See, when you explain to an interviewer how you co-built an application with Devin AI, you're actually showcasing many strengths: your architectural decision-making, your ability to work with AI tools, and your teamwork mindset. And that's exactly the qualities that future employers care about. And don't just take my word for it. This is already happening in the real world. Goldman Sachs, for example, has employed hundreds of Devin agents across their teams to boost productivity and speed up their workflows. And that's why I personally like Devin. It integrates just as well with the traditional industry workflows. And of course, like any serious AI tool, Devin isn't free. And it really can't be. Someone's gotta keep those monster servers running, because your old laptop definitely can't. But for what you get, it's worth it. And I'll also leave the link down in the description with possibly some discount. But here's the thing. If you don't have a credit card or don't want to spend any money right away, that's totally okay, and you don't have to do that to be able to follow along with the video. The concepts I'll be talking about are mostly concerning code architecture. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that we'll explore and go deep into architecting the system, not just getting AI to do it. So without even coding or following along, you can sit down behind your laptop or a smart TV and just watch me use Devin so you can see how the future of development will look like. And honestly, Cognition's future, the company behind Devin, looks even better after acquiring Windsurf. They're building a full ecosystem consisting of an AI editor, AI autocompletion, AI code reviews, and more, so Devin will integrate right within it. I'll try to get you free access once that actually drops. So yeah, it's worth it now, but it's going to become even more exciting later. So click the link down in the description, head over to Devin, and create your account. But before we touch even a single line of code, we need a plan. Not just for the app itself, but for how we're going to work with Devin AI. Because building with AI isn't just throw a vague prompt and pray for production-ready code. That's like telling an intern, just build me Amazon.com, and then wondering why you got half a broken website. The real skill is planning the architecture and delegation. That is, knowing which parts AI can handle reliably and which parts need human ownership. Think of Devin as a developer who works fast but needs very detailed instructions. Your job is breaking down the project into clear, bite-sized tasks and writing the kind of briefs you'd give to a teammate. So let's architect this e-commerce application. Because it's not just a bunch of random pages, it's a system. And to make sure Devin doesn't get lost along the way, you need a blueprint. At the start, you might be tempted to split everything into dozens of microservices on day one. Don't. That's like buying 10 AI tools for writing one email. It's an overkill. So start with a modular, monolithic architecture. One repo, but clear boundaries inside, with catalogs, carts, orders, and payments. It's easier to run and change. Later, if you truly need to scale something independently, just peel it off into its own service, step by step. And we'll do the same today by beginning with a monolith that's structured for growth. So what's the big picture here? Let's talk about it, starting with the front end. You'll develop this application using Next.js, TypeScript for type safety, and TailwindCSS for utility styling. Since you're using Next.js, you have different rendering strategies to choose from. For things like the homepage and product details pages, server-side rendering is perfect because it means that Google can index them for SEO and users can see something meaningful right away instead of staring at a blank screen. For other pages, we'll use other strategies like ISR or even PPR. Because we can render them at once, cache them at the CDN edge, and then quietly revalidate in the background every few minutes. This gives you the speed of static sites with the freshness of dynamic content. And making all of these considerations is very important when deciding on a tech stack. Now, behind the front end, you've got the API layer. In Next.js, that often means using server actions or building out your own app API routes. This is where you centralize your logic, fetching products, adding items to the cart, creating orders, and even processing payments. Keeping this consistent and well-structured makes the app easier to maintain as it grows. At this stage, you shouldn't over-engineer it, but you should still create some boundaries. For example, cart logic shouldn't be tangled up with product catalog logic, and payments should have nothing to do about marketing content. This is that separation of concerns that future-proofs your app. And with server actions, instead of wiring up fetch requests everywhere, you can directly call server-side logic securely. So once the API layer is done, we want to focus on the data layer. For this app, something like Postgres will be your best friend. It's relational, battle-tested, and scales well. You can use it for structured things like products, users, orders, and payments. And a clean schema keeps everything consistent. On top of Postgres, you'll probably want an ORM like Prisma or Drizzle. It'll give you some type safety, migrations, and a more elegant way to query data without drowning in raw SQL strings. And it's very easy to switch to some other database in the future as the query code stays the same. And then there's the final layer, a layer that nobody sees but everybody feels, and that is delivery. This is where CDNs or content delivery networks come in. A CDN isn't just about caching your images anymore. With Next.js, your static pages and even those ISR pages we talked about can be cached right at the edge, closer to your users. This means that your app feels fast everywhere, not just near your main server. You, as a developer and as an architect, have to keep these things into account. The key takeaway here is not to just think about where to deploy. Think about how will my users experience this app globally. So when you zoom out, the architecture looks like this. A modular monolith at its core, clean boundaries for each domain, Next.js on the front end with smart rendering strategies, a tidy API layer using server actions, a strong relational database underneath, and a CDN that makes the whole thing feel snappy worldwide. That's the mindset of an architect. Not a what shiny tool can I add, but what's the simplest structure that'll scale when I need it to. So now that we have architected our application, we have to figure out how to convey it to Devin. You most likely won't realize just how bad at prompting you are until you're already frustrated. You open ChatGPT, type, "Hey, generate me a login page," and it confidently generates something, but it's not what you had in mind. It's mostly off, bad UI, broken logic, barely usable output. So you try again, slightly better, still not usable, and after 4 attempts, you give up and build it yourself. Does this sound familiar? Problem isn't the AI. The problem is that you're prompting like a user, but you're trying to develop like an engineer. So if there is one thing you need to know, then it's that development with AI is not equal to just Googling. When you code with AI, you're not just asking questions, you're delegating work. And AI is not Google. It's more like a junior engineer on your team. And like any junior dev, if you just tell them to build a dashboard and walk away, they'll do their best, but you'll probably end up rewriting half of it. But if you give them clear specs, what the goal is, and what tools to use, and what the structure should look like, they'll deliver exactly what you need, often faster than you could have done it solo. This is what good prompting is. It's not magic words, it's technical clarity. It's the skill of writing just enough direction so AI becomes your most productive teammate. But that's not what most of us do. We kinda treat AI like the Stack Overflow search box. Vague prompts like build a chat app in React won't cut it. You'll get generic code, half-baked logic, and questionable architecture at best. It's like asking someone to build a house without saying how many rooms, which materials, and where to put the doors. That's the key. AI doesn't do well with build me an Amazon, but it's excellent when we feed it with one precise feature at a time. So instead of just asking, from now on, handle your prompts like this. Start with what you're building, which is the objective. How it should be structured, these are the tech decisions. What the steps are, these are the tasks. And finally, what you expect back, which are the output requirements. Only then you'll see a difference from the generic prompts that you're addicted to. Here's the exact structure that I use when I'm prompting AI to help me build real-world apps. It's simple, clean, and well-tested. Link for this entire prompt will be in the video kit down below, completely for free, with even more details and explanations. So definitely check it out. But yeah, it'll look something like this. Objective, structure, tasks, output requirements, and then finally some notes. But this is too generic. So let me show you exactly how I approach it with examples. So AI can consider themselves a developer. For example, saying you are a full stack engineer assigned to build a modern web application from scratch. That way, it'll position itself more as a full stack engineer than a generalist responding to your chat. Next, specify the objective. Explain the goal of the project in 1 to 2 lines. For example, build a minimal blog editor that supports Markdown formatting and autosave. Not too long, this is only the objective. Think of it like a main headline in the newspaper. Then specify the structure. Define the tech stack and structural decisions. For example, Next.js with app router, TailwindCSS for styling, Better Auth for auth, Postgres, Drizzle ORM, and so on. And then finally, very specifically, define the tasks. Break them into different logical chunks. Like set a project with TailwindCSS, Postgres, and Drizzle. Create a posts table with title, content, slug, and created at. Build the Markdown editor using React Markdown, add the autosave feature, and then render blogs at /blog/slug. Right after that, repeat yourself again and define the output requirements. What do you expect the AI to return? For example, output the full React component and tell me where to put it. And for any other information, you can also provide some additional notes, like any extra details or constraints. For example, keep it minimal, follow industry code guidelines, and don't use heavy packages. Perfect. Now you know not only how to architecture your application, but you know how to convey that architecture to the AI, one small defined task at a time. And once again, I'll leave the full instructions for prompting in the video kit down below. So finally, let's dive right into setting up our project. In this lesson, I'll show you how to spin up a new Next.js application, but not a usual way. Normally, setting up Next.js, Postgres, Drizzle, Zustand, TypeScript, ESLint, TailwindCSS, and making it all work together seamlessly does take a couple of hours, if nothing breaks. You jump between docs, install one package after another, and maybe waste some time fixing some errors that come up. Even when I teach that stuff on YouTube, most of the time goes into the setup instead of explaining why I choose these tools. But what if you could skip all that boring setup and just automate it? Sure, you could build your own CLI and wire everything together, or just use something smarter like Devin AI. With a single command, be it a smart command, Devin sets up the entire application with all of the latest tools. It's so quick and effortless, you'll wonder why you ever did it manually. So let's fire it up and see if Devin really gets it right. But let's start the proper way, by creating a new GitHub repo so we can sync our work with Devin. Devin runs its logic and actions inside a virtual development environment. It's a machine, and the repository acts as the foundation for writing and editing code, running it on the servers or installing dependencies, and even more importantly, understanding your project's structure and goals. Just like you sync your code between your local machine and GitHub, now there's one more device in the mix, Devin. To keep everything in sync, your machine, Devin, and GitHub all need to stay aligned to follow the same source of truth. So when you make a change and push it over to GitHub, Devin picks it up and stays updated with those changes too. So let's create a new public GitHub repo by heading over to github.com/new and give your repo a name. In this case, we're building a Nike e-commerce application, so I'll just say eCommerce. For you, the owner will be yourself, your own profile. But in this case, I'll select JavaScript Mastery Pro as the entire organization within which we're running Devin. So we're using it for other projects as well. So it's just going to be convenient to just use it directly on the organization. If you want, you can give it a description, set the visibility to either private or public, and then just create a new repo. Once you create it, head over to Devin within your account and head over to Deep Wiki within the sidebar. Here, you can add a new repo, and now you'll have to configure your Git integration to be able to see your repo. So head over to Integrations, and you can see that there is Slack, which is super useful, Linear for tracking PRs, and then there's GitHub. So I already enabled it for a couple of accounts, but let me also go ahead and show you how you can connect it to another account. Just click Add Connection, then choose your profile, Configure, and then just give it to access only to some repos or all repos if you want to. And you can review the request right here and give it permissions. Once you do that, you should be able to see your repos. So search with the one with the proper name, and don't try to index it first. You first have to add it to your machine. So find the repo with the same name you just created and add it to the machine. It'll say that this will clone a repo to Devin's machine snapshot. Every Devin session starts with a new copy of this machine snapshot. So we're going to add this repo and click Start. And right now, Devin is working within its own virtual environment, which is running on a Ubuntu device. And you can see that right here, where we have our setup agent. There's a working terminal. And then finally, there's also a browser running on that virtual machine. Now, instead of just going ahead and verifying all of these commands immediately, like running a git pull, installing dependencies, and all that good stuff, I actually want to immediately set up an application environment within which we're going to be working. So let's write our first very important prompt. I'll start by saying something like, create a Next.js app with TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind, CSS, Better Auth, Neon, Postgres, Drizzle ORM, and Zustand. I think this is a very production-ready stack. And now that we'll use AI to generate it, while it's actually doing its thing, very soon that'll give me so much more time to dive deep into the explanations of why I chose specific technologies. But for now, let's also improve this prompt just a tiny bit by saying it to do something else other than just setting it up. So I'll say also define a product stable, seed sample Nike items, and render it on homepage that queries the DB with Drizzle and renders the list. Very soon, this should allow us to visually see some things on the screen as well. So let's run our first Devin command. You can see two things. Number one is that it's thinking, it's giving us a response, and you can also cancel the prompt. Pretty usual stuff with all of these AI generation chatbots, right? But you'll see the level of depth and detail that Devin goes through before giving you something. It starts with saying that he'll help us create a comprehensive Next.js e-commerce app. Okay, it checked out the directory, and then it's gonna start setting up the package JSON. But here's where Devin immediately stands out. It's asking us some questions. It says, I wanna update the setup config, and you can choose whether you wanna reject or update that. So I'll just say update, go ahead. And now it's gonna start by configuring the secrets. Of course, it's gonna be just dummy variables for now, but I think you can immediately notice that very soon we'll actually need to add these envs ourselves, like the database URL and some authentication keys. Basically what's happening is Devin is now going through the steps on the left one by one. It already pulled from our repo, and now it's configuring our secrets. Now, some of you might be a bit skeptical. Like, hey, we're just starting out and it's immediately asking us for our envs. Well, not at all. It just created an env local, which is currently filled with dummy variables. So your actual environment file will never be pushed over to GitHub, and in the same way, will never be pushed over to Devin's machine. It'll always stay on your local machine. That's a very important thing to note. So let's go ahead and create the env local. It's gonna ask us to update the setup config. And now it's gonna install the dependencies. So it immediately recognized that we wanna have all of these different libraries installed, and it found the packages for all of them. So I'll just click run. For step 3, we wanna install Drizzle Kit to enable database migrations. And while that is happening, you can see all of the inputs and outputs within the terminal on the right. And finally, it's actually diving into code. So first, it's gonna start by creating a database schema and configuration files. And this is actually following proper Drizzle configuration. Now it's gonna create a database schema and the products table, and here it is. I mean, this is just some code that we would have to type out manually, but in reality, after you finish the database architecture process and thinking and the schemas in your head, this is just the process of typing it all out. And you do it for every single application you create. So I'm very happy that we can very easily put it down right here. And keep in mind, you don't have to immediately accept it. If you want to make some changes to it, you can very easily interrupt it and then let it know what changes you want to make. But for now, this is good enough. I'll click create. And then if we need to modify it, we can always do that as easily as changing a line in the code. It also created the index file for the database connection. And at this point, you might be wondering, like, why is it asking me to click this create or update button so much? Like, is this how AI-assisted development is going to look like? Not at all. This is the case just for our initial command because it is so deep and it covers a lot of ground. So Devin just wants to verify that it's getting what we asked properly, and immediately generated an array of Nike products as well, which is always good to see. Now it's going to create a Zustand store for state management, and also the products.ts file, which uses TypeScript for type safety. Oh, and if at any point you want to see how this file looks like, you can just click it and it'll open it up right here within your browser. Let's also create the authentication configuration and a few more files. I'll let it do its thing and I'll just keep clicking run and create a couple more times until we have a fully functioning repo. Then we'll dive deeper into every single decision that Devin makes, and I'll have so much time to explain the why and the how everything is working. But to be honest, I just want to see how quickly can we get a full complex e-commerce Next.js application running just using Devin. Because typically it would take me a couple of days to set it all up properly. Okay, it started diving into TSX, which I'm very happy to see. And one concern that you might have is the code quality, right? The cleanliness of the code. I was initially very skeptical of these AI tools writing the code because, sure, sometimes the output can look good, but hey, how does it look behind the scenes, right? Is it actually clean? And we'll check out the entirety of the code that will be generated throughout this project, and I'll show you just how clean the code is. I was actually surprised that it created cleaner code than some of my teammates or myself would also write when developing some of these projects. So it is incredibly clean. And there we go. Step number 3, installing dependencies, is now completed. And now we can maintain those dependencies and keep them up to date. That was quick. So immediately we are setting up a linter. Yep, talking about code cleanliness. It doesn't just generate it once and make sure that it looks good. We'll also want to make sure that it is properly linted at all times. And another huge thing is that there's an optional step of immediately setting up tests. Since this is a new project without test setup, for now, we'll skip this step. But hey, at a later stage, we can very easily generate tests for our entire application. Now, later on, we'll run this app locally. So then we'll have to have the Neon Postgres database set up. But for now, I'll just click Update. And now it's going to even create some additional nodes with important info, which is basically just the README-MD. So our project is well documented as well. Wait. Don't yet click the finish button. First, let me explain the tech stack, and we have to do a couple more changes first, and then we'll be able to finish it. But don't click it just yet. Setup is complete, and our Next.js e-commerce app is now ready with all of these different technologies. But hey, why did I choose this specific stack? That is the question that matters. Because in the future, you won't just have to type things out manually, you'll have to think how to approach building applications like an engineer, with purpose and intent. So let me guide you through my thought process of coming up with this tech stack. First of all, the elephant in the room, Next.js. It gives us fine-grained control over rendering strategies, which is super useful for e-commerce apps. For product details pages, you can use static generations, which means pre-building the page at build time so it's served instantly with no server compute. And that's just great for SEO and performance. But for product listing pages, where content might change frequently, but not per user, we use partial pre-rendering or PPR, or maybe even server-side rendering, SSR, which lets us keep the page dynamic while still maintaining performance. Now, the second most important part of the tech stack is, of course, the database. And in this case, we're using Postgres. Postgres is a relational database, which means that we can use joins to fetch related data entities like products or categories or even orders with users in a single query using different types of joins. It supports something known as ACID compliance, which is important for transactional workflows like payments or inventory management because it ensures that our database transactions are atomic and consistent. In simple words, it provides the structured data with transactions safely and allows us to write queries which are ideal for logic like filtering, sorting, and checkout. And then taking this even further, we're pairing it with Drizzle ORM. It's a schema-first approach written in TypeScript. It is type-safe at compile time, so as you're writing a query, your editor knows exactly which fields are available, preventing you from making some invalid queries. There's also Better Auth, which we use for authentication. It supports email, password, OAuth, magic links, all of it, without locking you into a hosted solution. Your code, your users. And it also has a built-in rate limiting feature, which protects against brute force attacks. And finally, we're using Zustand for global state management, as it's a simple hook-based solution. Unlike Redux, it doesn't require actions or reducers or huge boilerplate. It also avoids unnecessary re-renders, helping with performance. And it's great for shared states like cart, user sessions, filters, or modals, all of which we'll have within this application. So there you have it. Now that AI is actually doing the typing, we can focus on what matters, which is understanding the reasoning behind the choices that we make. So now that you understand the decisions behind choosing specific parts of the tech stack, let's start using it with Devin. So now that Devin has generated all this code, let's immediately push it over to GitHub. Just click the Git icon on the right side, and you can add a message. Something like initial project setup. Commit it. It's asking us whether we want to stage all of our changes. So definitely say yes or always. And then sync and push them. Once you push your changes, publish your branch right here. And then finally, let's finish with the project setup. It'll run some commands to test it all out. And there we go. Setup passed with all checks. So click complete. This brings us to the end of the repository setup. It's going to save it into your profile and your repo. So let's give it a few seconds. And if you head back over to GitHub, check this out. Your entire initialized application is right here pushed within a couple of minutes. Feel free to take a few seconds to add a short description, topic, and very soon a website URL, because we'll also deploy this project to the internet. But for now, you can very easily browse the files that were created. But instead of just browsing them, I think you're more interested to see it all in action. The only thing we have to do before actually seeing it in action and running it locally is provide our own key. That's the only thing that Devin cannot do for us because it will be a security concern. So there are still some things that we have to do ourselves. From experience, the best way to set up a simple Postgres database online is through some of the serverless providers. In this case, I decided to use Neon because it allows us to, well, as they say, ship faster. So just go ahead and create a free account. When you're in, simply create a new project. You can name it something like eCommerce. We can host it on AWS. And for the region, you can select really anyone that is closest to you. And click Create. Once you reach the project dashboard, click the Connect button at the top right, and then simply copy this snippet. So now we have to set up our project within a local environment so we can add our connection string. To do that, we'll have to move over from Devin and GitHub over to your IDE or code editor. In this case, I'll be using WebStorm, which is a super powerful IDE, which as of recently is completely free for non-commercial use. It used to cost a lot, but it gave great benefits to professionals. But now it is completely free, so you can just download it and use it with me. Once you download it, we can create a new project within WebStorm, or we can very easily just clone an existing repo. So I'll select that. I'll head back over to my GitHub and just copy the URL. Once you do that, paste it right here, and let's clone it. And with that, all of the code that was generated for us is right here. You can check it out within the source folder, app, all of the files and folders are right here. So let me actually make this go full screen. And let's not forget to install the dependencies. You can see that WebStorm allows me to do that with one single button press. But if you're in some kind of another text editor, you can just open up your terminal and then run npm install. But now we have to actually add our environment keys. So let's first take a look at env local, and we have to replace this database URL with the one that we have to copy from here. So just paste your new one right here. Once that is done, run your application locally by running npm run dev. And that'll spin it up on localhost 3000. And check out what I have right here. An e-commerce app built with Next.js, TypeScript, Tailwind, Better Auth, and all of the other technologies that we outlined. So not only did Devin do the entire project setup, it actually created a nice boilerplate landing page letting us know what are the steps of our setup. So in the future, we'll have to set up our database and Better Auth, and then it even tells us what the next steps are. Now, here's the thing, and I wanna emphasize this. This landing page will most likely look a bit different for you. As a matter of fact, it can look totally different. We can never expect the same output from the AI. So this is something that I want you to know for the rest of the video. Whenever I run some prompts, you might get different results from what you can see on my screen. And that is completely normal. That does mean that you'll have to do some workarounds to replicate what I'm seeing on the screen, but more or less, we should be good because I'll be writing prompts that are super precise. And that's it. In just a couple of minutes, our entire application has been set up. You simply describe what you want in plain English, and Devin does the heavy lifting. But one thing doesn't change, and it's that you are still the architect. You choose the tech stack, you define the plan, and AI just helps you execute it faster. In this lesson, you'll implement the entire design system of the application, from the color palette and font families to core typography styles, all directly within the code. There's a complete theme guide ready for you. This was created by our designer Faizan, And it's exactly how things work in real-world projects. When you're working on a client or industry project, you'll often receive a design system like this alongside the main UI designs. We'll implement this manually first, so you can later feed it into Devin and have it consistently follow the theme in all UI-related tasks. Yep, Devin can help automate this too, but it's important to establish a solid foundation with your own conventions first. That way, your system stays clean and maintainable. So head over into source app layout.tsx, and let's first set up a new font family that we want to use. Instead of Geist, I want to use a font family called Yoast. So right at the top, I will import Jost, and this is a family coming from Next Font Google. Then we can set it up by saying const Jost is equal to Jost, and then we can pass a variable with which we can call it. That's going to be --font-Jost, and then we can choose the subsets of the font that we want to use. In this case, it'll be just the Latin subset. While we're here, we can also change the website's metadata by calling it Nike, and then we can also change the description by saying something like an e-commerce platform for Nike shoes. Perfect. And we also have to modify this part right here by adding our new font into the body's class name by saying something like jost.classname. Perfect. And now let's head over to the Figma link that you just opened. Check this out. Here, you can see all the different colors which we'll be using and their names, such as the dark 900, which is the variant of the color dark, and then the exact hexadecimal value. And then we also have the light and supporting colors. Now, if you check out Tailwind's guidelines on customizing your colors, you can see exactly how you can add these custom colors to your theme. And if you want to dive a bit deeper into Tailwind CSS, I would highly recommend checking out our Tailwind CSS crash course on YouTube and full Tailwind courses coming soon on jsmastery.com. So let's implement it by heading over into app globals.css. And for now, I will clean up everything from here. We just want to have the import at the top that'll say Tailwind CSS, and then we want to define the theme. Now we can start with a dark color by doing --color-dark, and then give it a variant of 900. And this is going to be that hexadecimal color of #111111, like this. I just picked this right here from the color guide. We can also get different variants, such as we can do light 100. So if I head over here, we can check it out. That's going to be --color-light 100. And that's going to be #FFF. Perfect. And now you can go ahead and add all of the other colors. Dark 700, 500, different light colors, as well as the supporting colors too. When you do it, it should look something like this, where we have 3 sets of shades and all the different variants. Just so you don't have to type it manually, I will leave the final globals.css down below so you can just copy and paste it. You don't have to do it yet. You can do it in a couple of minutes when I show you how we can set up the typography of our application. So right below the colors, if you scroll a bit down, you'll be able to see our typography guide. Here we can use Helvetica, as well as some other fonts like Gilroy later on. And as before, within Tailwind CSS documentation, you can see how we can define different theme variables, such as fonts. So let me show you how we can do it for our application. In this case, just below the fonts, I will set up the font, Jost, and that's going to be equal to Jost or sans serif as a backup if we cannot find it. Now, while we're here, you can also define different heading sizes. For example, here, you can see that the font size of an H1 heading is 72 pixels with a line height of 78 and text transform uppercase. So you can add it right here by saying --text-heading-1 and set it to 72 pixels. Similarly, you can set the text heading 1 line height to 78 as per the Figma design. And then also we can do the text heading not line height, but in this case, we'll modify the font weight. And this will be something like 700. It's going to be quite bold. Perfect. And now we can repeat it for all the other headings and texts directly from the Figma design. Just so you don't have to type it out, as I said, you can get this complete block containing the headlines as well as the colors from the video kit down below. Now, to test these within our application, let's head over into our app, page.tsx, and remove absolutely everything from here and just create a new functional component by running rafce. You can call it home. And then within here, return an h1 that'll have a class name equal to text heading 1 and font of Jost. And it'll say Nike. Now, if you head back over to localhost 3000, sorry for flashing you with a light screen, but you should be able to see a Nike text with this nice looking font in a bold, large variant. This means that everything is working well. Now, while we're still setting up our project, let's also get all of the assets into it. See, within our Figma design, sure, we have already inputted all the colors and typographies, but there's going to be a lot of different images, such as these shoe images, and little things like the Nike logo at the top. So you could either go ahead and manually download all of these little icons and images one by clicking many times and then exporting them, or you can get the complete public folder that I will provide within the video kit for you, just to make it a bit easier. It'll be just a zip folder on Google Drive, so just go ahead and download it. And when you do, check out your current public folder, delete everything that is within it, or you can delete the entire public folder. Find your new downloaded zip, unzip it, and just drag and drop it into your current application at the root of your application. There we go. So now we have the public with all of the different shoe images, as well as the logos and more. And now here's a very important thing that we have to do, and that is to push the changes to GitHub, because that's the only way for Devin to be aware of the changes we made so that it can properly modify the application in the future. So just open up your terminal. I'll actually open up my current one and split it into two. I'll call the first one app, and I'll call the second one terminal. So we can run some additional commands while our app is running. I'll say git status to see what the state is. You can see we made changes to a couple of files. And then we can do git add dot, git commit -m. We can say something like implement initial styles, and git push. Perfect. So now if you head back over to GitHub and reload, you'll see that some changes were made just now. So this is amazing. So far, it's the same workflow you're used to. Nothing new, but just a little shift from here on. You've made some changes and pushed them to the repo, and that's what matters. Because Devin needs to stay up to date with the latest codebase, just like any teammate would. Think of Devin as your colleague or pair programmer, actively working alongside you. So now that the project has been set up, let's dive into this new flow. In this lesson, you'll use Devin for the very first time, not to build the entire app, but to handle those small repetitive UI pieces. Can you guess what they are? I mean, they're the usual suspects. A navbar you've coded more times than you can count, a product card that looks the same on almost every e-commerce site, and of course, a footer. Important, but honestly, not worth your precious time. This is where AI comes in handy. It shines when you give it small, focused tasks. Hand it the whole landing page in one go, and it might panic and go off script. You're welcome to try it, but don't say I didn't warn you. In this video, you'll learn how to write better prompts and actually get your AI pair programmer to do what you need without going off rails. So head over to Devin AI and click on the Devin session. This will open up a prompt window similar to that of ChatGPT. But here's the kicker. You can give it access to a specific repository. So make sure to choose the one that we worked on. Oh, and here's the cool thing. GPT-5 got released recently, and it's already included within the agent preview, so we can turn it on. Now, if you head back over to your Figma design, you can see that we have a very simple navigation bar at the top. Then we have these product cards. We can skip these trending sections. And finally, there is a very simple Nike-like footer. So now we have to write a prompt that will allow us to build this navbar, product cards, and the footer. Let's start with writing a prompt. We can say something like, you are a senior full stack engineer assigned to build a modern web application from scratch. And you already know the deal. After that, we can define the objective. So here you would go about saying something like build 3 responsive UI components. That's going to be a navbar, a reusable card, and a footer. We can then say based on the provided design. So what do I mean based on the provided design? Well, for now, we'll provide these designs as just images. But soon enough, you'll just have to provide Figma links, and Devin, with the help of the official Figma MCP, will automatically refer to their designs and will try to replicate them as close as possible. See, even right now, if you head over to Settings and then the MCP Marketplace, here you can see all of the different MCPs that Devin right now supports. So what is an MCP? Well, an MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, and it's an open standard created by Anthropic. Its job is to give AI models a clean and consistent way to talk to tools, services, and data sources. I mean, you can talk to ChatGPT or Devin out of the box, but they only have the data that you give them. In this case, Devin has access to our GitHub repo. But if you want them to query your company's Postgres database, call the internal APIs, look into your file system or Git repo, or maybe send a Slack message once a new PR is ready, or anything like that, well, then you'd want to integrate it with these MCPs. In simple words, MCPs allow your AI to interact with data, systems, and tools in a reusable way. And Devin already integrates with a lot of them. Actually, there is a Figma MCP too, but it's not yet official. So for the time being, we'll just pass the screenshots of the Figma designs, and that's going to be enough info for Devin to generate them. So if we head back over to our session, the second thing we'll have to give is some more structure. And here we can say something like, use the tech stack present in the project structure. We can also say something like, use typography and color palette. That's also provided in globals.css. And then we would go ahead and define the tasks for Devin to replicate, the output we wanted to achieve, and finally give it some notes. Now, instead of me writing all of this by hand, I'll actually provide you with the full prompt in the video kit down below. So if you just open it up, you'll see this first prompt we're on, and then you can just paste it right here. It'll look something like this. Now, do you have to make the prompt so long and so detailed? Definitely not. It can be much shorter. But for the purposes of this course, just so we can follow along and get similar outputs, I really took my time to properly define what needs to happen so we can get better outputs. And as we're referring to the provided designs, we of course have to pass those images into it. So if you head back over to the design, you can actually export these components as just images. So you can export it as, for example, JPEG by selecting this navbar and then click Export Navbar. We can do the same thing for this card right here. And finally, for the footer, I will actually copy this as PNG, so it's all together. And now I can start pasting those images. I'll first add the footer and make sure to also drop the navbar and the image card. Before we continue, make sure to give it access to the repo and select the agent preview, and let's give it a go. As soon as you press enter, this text will actually turn into Markdown, so you'll better be able to see what you requested from AI, and then it'll start setting it all up. It'll analyze the entire code base, synthesize the search results, evaluate its confidence, and it's going to think about the questions you asked it to do. You can also monitor the progress on the right side if you want to, but more or less it's going to give you everything important here. Oh, and here's an important note. You see that for every action, there are these ACUs. Now, what does this ACU stand for? Well, Devin runs on ACUs, and these are called Agent Compute Units. These measure how much work Devin is doing based on task complexity, code execution, and the virtual machine usage. The good news is that it doesn't burn any ACUs while it's idle, running tests, or setting up repos, only when it works. You can always buy more credits for more ACUs, and Devin will show you exactly how much each action costs. This one is very, very inexpensive. Now you can see that Devin understood its tasks. It'll create 3 responsive UI components for the Nike e-commerce platform based on the codebase structure. Typography and color variables defined in globals.css, text stack is recognized, font is here, components directory is there, and it'll get the images from the public folder. The confidence is very high. And now there's a plan overview. It's going to add 3 components, navbar, card, and footer, all styled with tokens from globals.css. It'll optionally export this index.ts and wire these components together to create an app shell, and then the sample card will be temporarily placed in the page for visual check. This is exactly what we wanted to do, and it can do that with confidence of high. And it actually did it. You can see right here that it created the navbar, the card, and the footer. And now it's going to lint it and put it all together so we can visually see it within our application. And there we have it. Devin opened up a new pull request. It gave us the components we wanted, and everything is prepared for us right here within this PR. Now, I love it that the PR was created instead of just pushing the code directly to our code base. That would be a bit too much. But here, we can actually see what it did, review this conversation, and it even provides a complete diagram of what it did. So now you can check out the file changes right here. There you have it. Or even better, we can open them up within WebStorm. So first, run git pull to pull the latest changes. And then, depending on which editor you're using, you can find your Git system. On WebStorm for me, it's Control-Shift-G, which will open up this Git view right here. And then you can click on it. So head over to the PR that it opened, right-click it, and then check out to this revision. Now, if you head back over to your code, you should be able to see the changes that were implemented. Here's the footer. It even provided some columns, and then the code is very, very clean, where it maps over those columns. There's the navbar with different navbar links. Once again, the code is super clean. And then there's a reusable card. Oh, and after creating a PR, it even decided to export these components. So we can take a look at this commit right here. And you'll notice that this one also has this index.ts from which it nicely exports all of these components. Now, to be able to see the changes that Devin implemented, we can head over to the page where currently it just says Nike, and we can try to render a couple of cards. Before doing that, we can head over to the layout first and render the navbar at the top of the children, right within the body. So that's going to be navbar. And then right below it, we can also render the footer. Make sure to import these, and they're going to be coming very conveniently from @/components. But now let's actually render the cards. And for that, we'll have to create some dummy data to map over them. And I think once again, this is the perfect use for AI to quickly generate some code that we don't really feel like typing and it isn't mentally challenging. So what I'll do is I'll open up Junie. Junie is a coding agent built right into WebStorm. So you can just install it as a package, press Command-Shift-P and then type Junie, and then it'll pop up right here. So now I'll ask it to, in the homepage, create a section within which there should be an H2 that'll say latest shoes, and below it there should be a div inside of which we map over some placeholder data. Each product will be a reusable card which already exists within the codebase. You can use pictures from the public folder. And let's see what it comes up with. I'll give it some time to create it, and then I'll be right back. There you have it. You can already see it's doing its thing. And if you don't want to use Junie, you can just type it out manually. There we go. It is done. It has created a list of dummy products that we can show. And then it is conveniently mapping over them and using the card component that Devin created, passing all the right props. So if you head back to the browser, it'll look something like this. We can of course remove this huge Nike text and capitalize this L in latest shoes. So now we already have something that resembles a Nike e-commerce store. Pretty cool, right? Still, we wanted to ensure that it is perfect. I noticed a couple of things that can be improved. For example, the navbar is white and there's a white Nike logo. The footer should have been black, so that's not good. And also there should be some max width for this product section. And also there should be some max width for the homepage when listing these products. So what do you say that we go ahead and wake Devin up? I'll once again pass these images so it knows what we're referring to. Also for the product image, I will now pass this bottom part as well so it knows that it should show the number of colors, the names, and everything else. And also show this complete section so it knows how to show these cards one next to another. Oh, and before I start writing the prompt, let's not forget to push the code that we added to our codebase. That's the only way for Devin to know what's happening. Okay, open up the Git interface one more time, and on the left side, you'll be able to see different branches. So if we want to push things, we want to check out to this branch that Devin has created with the changes that we wanted to implement with this PR. All the code will still be there. If you check out to that branch, you'll notice that you have all of the components that were generated by Devin, but if you head over to the homepage, they're kind of missing. So I'll provide this starter homepage within the video kit down below, so you can just copy and paste it here. It's the same thing that we got generated before, mapping over our product cards. So now we want to push these changes to this branch. We can do that by running git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say something like implement components on homepage and run git push. This will now push the changes to this new branch that Devin created for us. And then if you head back over to Devin, it'll now understand those new changes when it wants to make some additional changes. So let's write the prompt. Make sure the navbar looks like in the design. Logo should be black. Make sure footer is black too. On the homepage, make sure there's max width, same as navbar and footer have it. And make sure the product card looks like on the design provided, and that it looks good in the list, also provided above. And press enter. This will wake Devin up, and it should make changes to the changes that we implemented within our code base. So it basically feels like we're working together and collaborating with another developer. So let's give it some time, and once it's back, we'll check out the changes directly within our code editor or IDE. So as you can see, it went ahead and edited a couple of pages, and then it verified it's all good and pushed it. But check this out. It's even navigating to the page within a virtual browser and checking how it looks like. And then based off of that, it can make additional style changes. That's the beauty of Devin. It's not just a chat box to which you say something. It knows your entire code base, it knows the design, and you can connect it with all the different MCPs, and you can even check out its progress right here as it's implementing it. Check out the shell that it's working within, check out the full code base here, and then even the browser. It's all integrated within this web app. And now that Cognition acquired Windsurf, all of it will be even more neatly integrated within the new editor experience. There we go. Updates are live on the PR and verified locally. So heading back over to our application, I believe we're already on the branch. So if I just run git pull, it should pull all the changes. There we go. And if we head over to the page, you can see that now there should be some other changes right here as well. But we'll be able to verify it better when we open it up on localhost. So back on localhost, you can see that now the navbar is perfect. The max width for the homepage is good. And the footer is already looking much better in the dark mode. It actually added the fourth item right here, but the actual product cards are still not exactly right. And this is something that I want to point out. Throughout the entirety of this course, and in general, when working with AI agents such as Devin, we'll never get exactly the same output. So all of our apps are going to be different. So at the end of the day, maybe you end up with an application that looks a bit different or functions in a bit of a different way. That's totally up to you. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that we can take the app in an entirely different direction with different prompts we give it. Still, I'm not going to defend it here. Obviously, this isn't looking perfect, so we can tweak it manually. So let's go ahead and modify it a bit. I'll remove this section at the top. We don't need it to say Nike. We already know it is based off of the navbar. And now I will head over into the card. And maybe we can remove this badge part. So here it's checking whether this label exists. If not, then it just displays the label. I don't think we need it at this point in time. We can just show the actual image. Now you can also notice that it styled the colors in a bit of a weird way. it says BG dash, and then it created this like a custom color within square brackets. But instead of that, we can just say BG dash light dash 100. And now we can see that my WebStorm will automatically recognize the color, whereas before it didn't. So we have to go ahead and make these changes for a few other instances. It's highly likely that for you, it did it the right way. A couple more important ones are the background color of the card. So I'll change it right here, BG light 200. And then we have a couple more occurrences. Also, let's make sure that the image itself is object cover instead of contain, and we don't need any padding right there. And then there are a couple more situations where we have to change this color. I'll actually try to automate it. So I'll do it a few more times. You can see as I select it, it auto-selects it everywhere else. So it's easy for me to just select it everywhere alongside the closing square bracket and then just remove it. If you make a couple of these changes and go back, you can see that this now looks so much better. I'll go ahead and do those changes across the entire repo so that Devin can actually learn from this and in the future implement it the right way. This is looking amazing. So let me also open up the inspect element to check out how it looks on mobile. And besides this very weird and AI-ish looking hamburger menu, which actually works by the way, it is all looking great and it functions well on mobile devices. So this is amazing. I'm actually super satisfied with this initial landing page. So now we can head back over here and make a push. Git add dot, git commit, landing page improvements, and git push. Now, if you head back over to the same PR, you'll notice that now all of the files are changed, the ones that we created, as well as the ones that Devin created. And finally, we are ready to merge this PR. Go ahead and click the big green merge pull request button because there are no conflicts with the base branch. And confirm the merge. And that's it. Now, if you want to, you can head back over to your editor and check out back to the main branch. And make sure to run git pull just to make sure we have all of the latest changes. There they are. And now on localhost, this time running on the main branch, you can see all of the features that were implemented by Devin. Pretty cool, right? The key here is learning how to let AI handle the simple stuff instead of freaking out and avoiding it altogether. Think of AI like a calculator. You wouldn't do all your math on paper when a calculator makes it quicker and easier. And remember, AI isn't here to replace you. If you use it wisely, it just helps you work smarter and faster. And in this lesson, we're going to focus on creating the authentication for our e-commerce app. Now, it is advisable to create a new Devin session. So head over to Sessions and just create a new one and give it access to the repo as well as Agent 5 preview. We do this for Devin not to run out of context because there was a lot of stuff happening in the previous session, so we want to start a new one for every new major feature. Now, just to save us some time, I'll provide you with a complete prompt within the video kit down below, so you can just copy it and paste it here. But of course, we'll go through it together. And another thing you can find in there is the design inspiration that Devin can take for building our auth. So let's actually go through this prompt together. Once again, we have the "You are a full stack senior engineer" prompt. Then we're diving into the objective, and it is to build fully responsive styled authentication pages, both the sign in and the sign up using a shared group layout. This is what matters because we are the architects here, so we have to specify how we want it done. These pages must support email, password, social, sign in, all of that good stuff. And the design should be taken from the one we provided, following the theme and typography outlined before. I'll also add here that it can use Tailwind v4 for conventions when applying styles, for example, text white 900. And then we dive into the structure. Once again, you don't have to be this detailed, but just so we have similar outputs, I decided to be very, very descriptive of how we want things done. I specified it within different tasks. And finally, the output requirements. So basically, we want to just have 2 pages back. And with that said, let's submit it. Now, talking about auth, every single app needs it. It's 2 pages, sign in and sign up, wrapped in a clean, responsive layout that feels on brand. Like, if you pause for a few seconds to think Think about it. Almost all Auth UIs are 99% the same everywhere. It's 2 inputs, a button, maybe some sign in with Google magic link, and then a link to switch the pages. You've coded it before, and you'll likely code it again. But you shouldn't have to waste hours retyping the code every time. So this is the exact use case where you can use AI to generate repetitive, structured UI that still maintains your theme and folder organization. Now let's give it some time to work out its magic. Very quickly, it came up with a complete plan of how it's going to approach creating this, such as creating a new auth layout with split screen and then add different pages within it. Afterwards, it worked and implemented all of these files, and it gave us a complete pull request with all the changes. Once again, you can just click into it to open it up within GitHub, and all of the changes are right here alongside the actual photo of the implemented design. This is pretty crazy, I gotta say. But of course, let's test it within the actual codebase. I'll do a git pull to pull the latest changes, do Ctrl-Shift-G to open up my Git environment, and then I'll switch over to the new branch, Auth Pages, by checking out to it. You can also just copy the name and then do git checkout and move to this branch. Perfect, so let's see the changes that have been implemented. You can see that now auth and root are separated into different layouts. Within auth, we have a layout that is shared between both the sign in and sign up pages. The only difference is the auth form. And you can see that it did it exactly as how I would approach it, by creating a new reusable auth form component, and then there's only one prop called mode, which decides whether it's going to show the sign in or sign up functionalities. And then there's also the root layout, which has the navbar and the footer within it. And here's our homepage. I think there's one thing we got to do, and that is to move this page within the root layout, because only then the navbar and the footer will still be showing. Maybe for you it was okay already. If you do it that way, you can still see that our homepage was left intact, but now you can navigate over to localhost 3000/sign up. And you'll be able to see this beautiful Just Do It Nike authentication page, which looks exactly like it does on the design. You can enter your full information and sign up. Well, at least soon you'll be able to. And you can also use Google and Apple. Also, if you want to switch over to sign in, you can just click right here and it is automatically interlinked. Wonderful. There are absolutely no changes that I would make here. And now if you get back to the PR, you can also review all the changes. It's looking good to me. There's even a diagram with how all of these files are interacting. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and merge our second PR. No conflicts once again, so we're smooth sailing. As soon as that is done, I'll head over to my editor and switch back to the main branch, do a pull, and then all the changes will be now on the main as well. So now on localhost 3000, we have both the homepage as well as the auth pages, which for now you can just visit manually by heading over to /sign in. I gotta say, this was super smooth. So let's continue. So far, we've seen AI generate this nice looking homepage and also these auth pages, but that's still just UI. AI can handle it for sure. But what about the backend? Can AI really build a secure, production-ready auth system that will go behind just this pretty layout? It can, but only if you guide it carefully. See, auth backends are full of repetitive tables, session cookies, server actions, ZOD validation, same patterns all over again. But if you clearly instruct the AI on the judgment calls, like how long should the session last? How do we safely migrate the guest cards? How do we handle all of the error edge cases and give it precise instructions? Well, then AI, or in this case your intern, can actually do the heavy lifting. That's exactly what we'll do in this lesson. You'll learn how to generate modular Drizzle schemas for users, sessions, accounts, verification, and guests. You'll also set up server actions for sign up, sign in, sign out, and all the guest handling. And finally, you'll configure cookie-based sessions. You'll define exactly which server actions to create, where to place them, how they integrate with the current platform, and how cookies and sessions should be handled. Then sit back and watch Devin handle the rest. So let's see it in action. And we can do it the easy way or the proper way. The easy way would be to just create a user table, store the session, and call it a day. But if you want real, production-ready e-commerce application, well, then instead of doing half the work, you should first ask the right questions. And that is, how do you handle guests who haven't signed up yet? How do you manage sessions securely with cookies? How do you allow multiple login methods without complicating the system? And how do you keep things modular so future features like OAuth or two-factor authentication are easy to add? Well, in this case, Better Auth will come to help. Better Auth is a comprehensive authentication framework built for TypeScript. It's going to give you the framework, but it expects a specific database structure. If you don't follow it, things will break. Or worse, you're going to lose the session security. And you can see that right here under core schema, where it specifically defines how a user, session, account, and verification should look like. We'll follow pretty much the same structure with one little addition, and that is a guest table. See, it'll let you treat anonymous visitors almost like users, giving them a temporary identity and keeping their data safe, and then later on we'll merge it into a real account. This means that every guest user will get a specialized token named session tokens stored in a cookie to recognize the guest across requests. The way it would work is that if a user visits your site with no account, you will create a guest row with a unique token with a cookie. Then, if they add items to the cart, well, we'll just add references for their guest ID. And then later on, when they sign up, you can simply migrate the cart items and preferences from guest to user. And finally, delete that guest row now that everything lives under that user. It might sound complicated, but just bear with me. We'll do it all with help of AI. Now, we're using Neon for the database. And thankfully, Devin already supports an official Neon MCP, which allows you to list, create, and delete Neon Postgres projects and branches, execute SQL queries, and insert tables and schemas. This is exactly what we need. So go ahead and enable it. And make sure to connect your account right here. Then head back over to Devin and create a new session. Once again, select a repo and a new agent. And within the video kit down below, find a complete prompt that we can pass in. Let's dissect it together. Once again, we're working with our senior full stack engineer that is acting as our intern. And this time, their objective is to develop a scalable authentication system for a Nike-style e-commerce application. This system should support both authenticated users as well as guests using Better Auth, enabling email and password login with no verification in MVP, session management, and smooth guest-to-user transitions during login and signup. The system must be modular, extensible, and production-ready. Talking about the structure, we're using the same stack as before. Postgres, plus Drizzle, plus Next.js app router, and Better Auth. Talking about the auth, we're going to use cookie-based auth system using Better Auth and guest sessions. We'll manage it all using Drizzle, and here is the schema that we want to have. Users, accounts, sessions, verifications, guests, and an index. That's a lot of different boilerplate schemas that we would have to write by hand. But now we can tell Devin what to do. I would try to be super precise by taking some fields from Better Auth so we have everything we need. For example, users need an ID, a name, email verification, image, and created add and updated fields. Then we have another table for the session, for the accounts, for the verification, guests, and more. Once again, do you have to be so descriptive? Definitely not. But will it help? Well, that's a yes. Then we tell it to use this cookie-based authentication, enable the guest-to-user migration, use Next.js server actions, and then protect the routes and do the checkout flow. And that's it. So let's go ahead and submit it. This is the first time that we're testing out Devin for something that is not an easy task. It's as hard as it can be because it requires understanding the entire code base and then implementing a solution across databases, authentication, Postgres, Drizzle, Better Auth, and other tools to all work together seamlessly within the existing codebase. I don't think a single human intern would be able to do it, especially not in a couple of minutes that'll take Devin to do this task. So let's wait a bit and then I'll be right back. Okay, so let's look at what we have right here. Devin says that it'll help us build a robust authentication system, and it already recognized some important code locations. There's an existing Better Auth configuration, current schema structure that needs refactoring, and then database connection setup. The implementation plan is to restructure the schema into modular files per table, then update the existing tables to match Better Auth requirements and our specifications, and add the new guest table for guest and session management, create server actions to tie it all down, and then implement secure cookie-based session. Exactly what we want. It'll also refactor the existing monolithic schema to ensure Better Auth compatibility. So it doesn't have to do this, but it's doing it to keep the code more clean. The confidence is medium because it needs to explore the codebase further to understand the complete authentication flow. But it got started. Then it worked on creating all of these different schemas and files. Then it did even more reading, and then it even applied some edits based on what it learned. Then it tried to run it, and once it did, it actually pushed a new branch and opened up a PR. And that PR is now ready and open right here. It includes modular Drizzle schemas, Better Auth wiring, guest session support, and server actions. And the next step is to just add a new database URL from Neon and run db push to see it. So let's go ahead and test it out. Back within our application, make sure to run git pull to pull the latest changes. Then go ahead and check out to the Better Auth guest sessions branch, or however it named it for you. If you move over there, you'll notice all the changes that it implemented right within your codebase. For one, there's going to be a lib with auth actions and many different database schemas. It also went ahead and installed some packages. So we have to run npm install to install those dependencies right within our application. Now, let's check it file by file to see how it did. First, I'm wondering about how it approached the Drizzle config. Here, we're importing the defined config from Drizzle kit. But one thing that I also want to add is for it to pull the environment variables, because sometimes it has trouble just getting them from the process env unless you say import everything as .env from .env. So make sure to install .env by running npm install.env, or I'm just going to ask my WebStorm to do it for me. Then what you can do is say .env.config and provide a path to your environment variables. For me, that's going to be under .env, and let's check if it's here, .local, right? So whatever you called it right here, make sure to also specify the path here, .env.local. And this contains the access to the database URL. Make sure that that is the case for you too. So that's going to be .env.local, database _ URL containing your Neon database string. If you don't have it yet, just pull it up from Neon. Now, we also want to copy those two lines and also add them to lib db index.ts. Here, we're also using that schema, and it's very important to use .env to actually be able to pull it up. And if you're wondering why we even need this, you can copy it and pull up Junie, ask it a question, and then say something like, why do I even need this part? And then press enter. It very quickly came up with a response that you need this in any runtime where environment variables are not automatically loaded for you. For example, node scripts or tooling that executes your code outside Next.js. For example, Drizzle kit migration scripts, which is exactly what we're using here. So without it, the process.env.database URL may be undefined. So that's why it's recommended to set up this .env config. Okay, with that in mind, we are ready to generate the schemas based off of the configuration that Devin created for us. Now, let's take a bit of a closer look at the user schema that it created. We have the necessary ID, the name, email. There's also this email verified, the image of the user, and then created and updated add fields. Now, in this case, Devin made this email verified field as a must field with a date type. But in our case, we can make it a Boolean field set to false. Or we could keep this data type but make it optional. That's because email verification will come later as part of MVP version 2. So for now, what I'll do is just set it to a state of Boolean, email verification. I'll make it not null, and by default, it'll be set to false. And make sure to get the Boolean right here from the top. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and go through some of the other schemas. There's also this schema for verification that lets us know whether the user has been verified. It has the ID, identifier, value, and all of the timestamps. That's looking good. There's also the account, which connects the account with a specific ID with a specific user ID and lets us know which provider they used to sign up. All of this is looking good. There's also the guest schema, which only has to keep track of the session token. And finally, there is the sessions table, and this one is looking good as well. What matters the most is that we have the user ID and the token right here. Perfect. For the sessions table, everything is looking good, but we just might want to change this ID to UUID right here. That's a bit more precise and works better with Drizzle. Great. So with that in mind, I definitely want to point out that there are likely to be situations where the code will be different for you. Maybe in your case, for the account, it chose to use text instead of UUID. For me, it was in the session. So our code output will never be the same. So you'll have to go through it and we'll have to make sure that it looks good. You can always compare it with my code at a specific point in time if you head over to my GitHub and just make sure that all the schemas and all the necessary things are properly set up for our application to work. I'll try to be as detailed as possible while going through the code base, because this is a collaborative process. Devin gives us the output, but then it's up to us to actually make it work. And now that we have checked out all the schemas, let's also open up the index.ts. You'll notice that it's exporting some schemas that we deleted a while ago, such as products, orders, and order items. So simply delete this line and keep everything as is. This only contains the newest exports. And if you take a look down below, there's a schema.ts file, which was a single monolith file that contained all of the exports, which we no longer need because now each one of the schemas lives within its own file. So delete the schema.ts file. Perfect. Now let's check out the auth files. First, we can head over into auth and then index.ts. Within here, we have a Better Auth options wrapper. And a couple of things you can notice is that we're using a Drizzle adapter and we're passing our database to it. The imports are right at the top. Then we're passing all of these schemas right here, such as the user schema, session schema, account, and verification. And then there's some additional settings down below, such as this email and password thing, which is turned on. But in this case, at least for the MVP, we don't have to require the email verification. So for the time being, I'll just set that to false. Also, for the socials provider, we can leave them empty for now, just an empty object. And then we can provide some additional settings on how we can store our sessions by opening up a sessions object. And here we can define the cookie cache. Within here, we can enable it by setting enable to true. And then we can set the max age. That's going to be 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 24 hours in a day times 7 days. And this is basically equal to 7 days in total. Now below the sessions, we can also configure our cookies by setting the session token and giving it a name of auth_session and provide some additional options, such as HTTP only, set to true. Also providing the secure variable, which is going to depend on our environment variables or our environment. So for example, if our environment, so process.env.node.env is triple equal to production, then it's going to be true, else it's going to be set to false. We can also give it the same site policy, which we're going to set to strict, as well as a path, which is going to be set to the root path. And finally, the max age as well, which is going to be the same as the max age for the cookie cache, 7 days. Finally, we can also provide some advanced options at the bottom. The advanced options here are going to be all about generating database IDs. So we can say database, and then define how the IDs of our documents in our database get generated. For that, we can create a new callback function, and we don't want to just return a string ID like this. We want to use an actual UUID because that's what works better with Better Auth and Drizzle. So we want to install a package called UUID. So just open up your terminal and run npm install UUID. Import it at the top by saying import in curly braces v4 as UUID v4 from UUID. And then for each new document, we can just generate a new UUID v4. That's going to look like this. Oh, and very important, outside of the advanced, we also have to add some plugins. In this case, we'll just add one plugin, and that is the Next Cookies plugin. See, in a typical Next.js server, cookies can be accessed from request response objects. But in Next.js app router or server actions, there isn't a direct global request response object. And that's where Next Cookies helps us by allowing Better Auth to read and write cookies properly in server-side functions like server actions or API routes. Great. So now our Better Auth setup is looking good as well. Let's exit it and let's check the Auth actions. Right here under Auth actions, you can see that Devin generated quite a few actions for us. I'm going to go ahead and collapse them so we can see it all in a single page. And that's going to look something like this. It created actions for creating guest sessions, the guest session itself, the sign-up schema, the sign-in schema, and then the functions for sign up, sign in, and sign out. They seem to be good, but we can change the inputs of the sign in and sign up functions to form data instead of an object. That way, we can pass these actions from the auth pages to auth form without making these auth pages client-side. This is nothing big, and you can keep it as it is, but this is just going to make our application that much better, especially since we're using Next.js. So in this case, let's start with sign up. And instead of simply getting the data by parsing the inputs we have right here, what I'll do instead is I want to accept the form data right here through props or through the first parameter. So I'll say form data of a type form data. We're accepting it. And then we can extract the data like this by saying const raw data is equal to an object where we have a name, which is equal to form data dot get name as string. Then we have the email as our second field. That's going to be form data dot get email as string. And finally, we have the password, which is form data dot get password as string. Now we can take that raw data and form a new data object out of it by saying sign up schema dot parse the raw data that we're getting right here. And then we can just form a new API request, sign up using email, by passing all of these proper fields from our frontend that get converted to our backend. This is perfect. So now we can copy this part and we can replicate it over for sign in. So let's expand the sign in action. And right at the top, I will paste the raw data and make sure that we are getting the form data of a type form data. But in this case, there's not going to be a name. It's just going to be email and password because we're just signing in using our email and password. And once again, we're taking that raw data and we're passing it into the sign in schema.parse. So make sure to copy the name of the variable and put it here. And finally, we make a sign in email API call. Perfect. Now there's just one more function that we have to create to get the current user. And this is coming strictly from the Better Auth documentation. See, the server provides a session object that you can use to access the session data. It requires request headers object to be passed to the getSession method. And here's an example using Next.js. So I'll just copy this part that they have right here, head back over here, and just below sign in, I will create and export a new asynchronous function called getCurrentUser. I'll open up a new try and catch block. In the catch, if something goes wrong, I will just console log that error. And I will also just return null because something went wrong. But in the try, I will try to get access to this session by saying const session is equal to await auth.api.getSession. Then we pass in the headers, and the headers we can get access to by saying await headers, which we have to import over from next headers right here. Perfect. And once we get our session, we can just return the user out of that session. So that is session ?user or null in case it doesn't exist. Perfect. So now our actions are properly set up to be able to communicate with the frontend. Oh, and since we've already implemented a function to get the user, we can test it out by heading over into app, root, page, and right at the top, we can try calling it. You can do that by saying const user is equal to await get current user, and then we can simply console log that user, just like so. And don't forget, since we're using await to get it, we have to also make this function asynchronous. We'll explore this later on as soon as we authenticate our first user. But for now, let's go ahead and check out our auth form. So if you head over to auth pages, sign in or sign up. So instead of just passing a mode to this auth form, what we have to do is also make it do something besides just rendering UI. And that is to implement the auth actions that we just created. So we can give it an additional prop called onSubmit, and here you can pass the action. The action in this case will be sign up coming from lib auth actions, just like this. And you can do the same thing for sign in by passing an additional action. OnSubmit will be equal to, in this case, it is sign in. Perfect. Now we have to go into the auth form and implement all the connections for auth to work. What does that mean? Well, first we have to define this new prop we're accepting. The prop is called onSubmit, and it is a function that accepts form data of a type form data, and then it returns a promise that then contains the OK, which is a Boolean, as well as the user ID, which is optional of a type string, or void, nothing if something went wrong. Now you can see that there's a yellow warning right here saying that maybe if this is a server action, it would be good to actually name it an action. So like onSubmit action. This is actually a very nice advice by ESLint. If you want, you can go ahead and change it in multiple places, but for now, I'll just leave it as it is. It's just a warning. Okay, so now we have to actually accept that prop of onSubmit within the props. Now, after we successfully submit, we'll also need to reroute the user. So what I'll do is I'll set up the router functionality from Next.js by saying const router is equal to use router, and make sure to import the use router coming from Next navigation. Not Next router, but Next navigation. Then we can create the handle submit function. Const handle submit is equal to an asynchronous function that accepts an event of a type react.form event. And as soon as we call it, we need to prevent the default behavior of the browser to reload. And then we can extract the form data. We can do that by saying const form data is equal to new form data e.currentTarget. Right now, TypeScript is complaining that the argument of type event target is not assignable to this HTML form element. So I think what we have to do is just give it some more info on what this form has. So I'll say HTML form element right here. And that means that it'll contain the current target of all of the form values. And now that we're getting the form data, let's just open up a try and catch block. In the catch, we can just console log the error if there is one. And in the try, we can try to call the server action responsible for our specific mode of the auth form. That can either be the sign in and the sign up, depending on which page we're on. So we can say const result is equal to await onSubmit. And once again, this onSubmit is different depending on the prop that we pass. It can be either sign in or the sign up. And then to it, we have to pass the form data. Perfect. And then we can check if the result is okay. In that case, we can just use the router.push functionality and push over to the home page. Just make sure that the router is coming from Next navigation and not Next router. Perfect. It looks like the OK does not exist on the result. I think that's only happening if we are in the catch, because then we're returning null. But if something goes right, which it should. In that case, there should be a result OK property. Perfect. And then we're pushing back to the home page. So now we have to use this handle submit when we submit the form. We can do that right here by scrolling down to the form. And then instead of just preventing the default, what we can do here is simply call the handle submit function once we submit the form. And that should happen once we click the button that is at the bottom of the form, either sign in or sign up. Oh, and one more important thing. In our backend and server actions, we have 3 fields: email, password, and name. But here on the front end, we might have full name. So make sure to rename all of the instances of full name here within HTML4, within the name, within the ID and the name as well. Make sure that it is just name and not full name. Perfect. And that's it. Now it's the time to test it all out. In this case, we have generated a lot of different schemas. We went through them at the start. So if you head over to libdb, you can check out all the schemas. But these are just the files that will generate the schemas when they're ran. So now it's our turn to trigger different commands that'll actually run real SQL queries that'll form the future of our database. So head over into package.json, and you can see here that Devin has created a couple of these scripts for us: dbGenerate, migrate, push, and studio. So we have to run the dbGenerate command. But before we do, let's just do one final check of our lib database schema, because what's going to happen is that this dbGenerate will look at our schema file, compare it with the current database state, and then if it finds differences, for example, if you added new columns or schemas or changed the table, it'll generate a new migration SQL file inside of migrations folder. In this case, I think there's just one small mistake I made. The email verified should be the same right here. Email _ verified. It should not say verification. So I just want to make this quick fix before we go ahead and run the dbGenerate command. So now open up your terminal and go ahead and run npm run dbGenerate. This will generate all 5 different tables. And after that, we are ready to push those changes to NeonDB. And that's exactly what the db push command does. So simply run npm run db push, and you'll see that it'll apply all the changes. Now, how do we actually check out our tables? There are 2 ways. The first one is to just head over to your NeonDB console and just check out the tables, and you'll see that we have 5 different tables right here. And the second way is to run npm run db studio, which will spin up a local studio where you can see your entire database. So in case you want to check it out later on, once we add some more products and stuff, you can definitely do it within here as well. For now, I'll stop it from running. And with that, we are ready to run our application after this huge push. I think it's already running for me within the second terminal, but I'll just go ahead and rerun it because we made so many changes. So if you head over to localhost 3000 /sign in, or you can navigate over to sign up as well, and we can give it a shot by creating a new account. I'll enter my name. Also, I'll do my email and a password. And then click sign up. As you can see, we automatically get redirected back to the homepage, which is always a good sign. But just to verify whether everything works right, we can go ahead and inspect element, head over to the console, and check out the console log that we have put. This console log is actually coming from the server, but you can also view it in the browser, and you can see all the info about the newly generated user. How do I know that it was generated for sure? Well, that's because it has this new ID. What you can do as well is head over to the network tab, reload the page, and check out the cookies that were generated for the user. You can do that by clicking on localhost, then head over to cookies. And if I expand this just a bit more, you can see all of the cookies that were generated for you. One is coming from Better Auth, and you can see the expiration dates and more. Now, this already gives us a lot of positive info, so we know that our user was created. But if you want to, you can also head over to your database and check out this newly generated user right here. And you can see one account that is connected with that user. Oh, and also a session got generated for that user so that we can track what they're doing and we know when they're logged in, or when should we just expire their session. This is absolutely crazy. This means that we have a fully functional authentication backend system hooked up with Postgres database and Drizzle and TypeScript, and it all works together, and it was generated by Devin. Sure, we needed to go through it and make sure that it's all properly hooked up, but about 99% of the code was indeed generated by Devin. And with that in mind, not only the Auth UI, but also the Auth Backend logic has now been fully set up. So the only thing that remains is for us to push it, to push our changes, to combine them in the PR that Devin created, and to call another feature finished. So I'll open up my terminal and run git add dot git commit -m finalize backend authentication logic, and then run a git push. Once again, make sure that you're in the same branch that Devin created for you. Once you do that, you can head back over to your open PR on the GitHub's repo and just check out how nice Devin makes it. It says auth modular Drizzle schemas plus Better Auth setup plus guest sessions and server actions. It actually gives it a proper name, unlike what we developers do. And then you have a complete summary of exactly what happened. Perfect stuff, and we're getting ready to merge it. And finally, I'm always so happy to see no conflicts with base branch, which means that we are ready to merge this PR into main. With just one click, I'll automatically do it, and I'll head back over to my Git interface on my WebStorm, and I will switch back or check out back to the main branch, within which I'll run a git pull to pull all the latest changes that we have implemented. And just like that, you've got a full Auth backend in place. Devin handled it exceptionally well. Tables, schemas, server action, cookie setup, and everything. Of course, we didn't just sit back and hope for the best. We still checked all the important stuff like sessions, cookies, authentication logic, fixed a couple of issues here and there, and that's exactly where the human touch matters. The result is a working, modular, and ready for production auth system without spending hours on repetitive setup. Devin did the heavy lifting, and we made sure it's safe, correct, and fits perfectly within our codebase. This is exactly how AI should be used. Fast, helpful, and letting you focus on the parts that you really need to use your brain for. Now that we have implemented authentication, the next natural step is to define your database. What tables you'll need, which fields go into each one, and how they all relate to each other. You might be thinking, okay, I'll just make a products table and an orders table, maybe a cart, and that should do it. Well, that's exactly how every junior developer starts. But if you want your system to scale, like handle thousands of products, users, carts, and orders, you've got to think like a real database architect. And I don't just mean reading a huge textbook on how to design your system database. It just means asking the right questions and doing the right actions. Once you understand how to make solid architectural decisions, getting things done becomes way easier, especially with Devin by your side. So let me show you how I approach designing a database for this whole e-commerce application that resembles a real e-commerce website structure, and then show you how I built it using Devin, all within an hour. First off, before writing any kind of a schema, your question should be, what is this system actually doing? Well, users browse products, they add things to their cart, eventually they check out, you get the money, they get the shoes. Sounds simple, right? But that implies a lot of things. A users table, products because they're buying and selling stuff, a cart, which is a temporary zone before purchase, an orders table, and a payments table to be able to track transactions. That's your base. And then you'll expand on each one of these bases to decide what else to implement. Let's start with users. You might be tempted to approach it in a way that only the logged in users are allowed to add the items to the cart. But in real-world apps, you want to remove as much friction as possible and allow people to check out as guests. So here's how to make it happen. Have a users table that holds registered people, but also generate a session ID for guest users that's stored in a cookie. Then have a cart table that accepts either the user ID or the session ID. So if a user is not logged in, you assign to them a unique session ID and create a cart for them in a database. And when they log in later, you can merge their cart into their account by adding their user ID and setting the session ID back to null. Keeping this in mind, your cart schema would look something like this. It has an ID, it has a user ID, which is set to null for guests, and it also has a guest ID, which is the fallback for anonymous carts. Also, there are some timestamps. The whole point here is assigning a cart to either a user or the guest. Handling products within a cart will be handled on its own. But to finalize this for the user, let's also have a table for holding addresses. So as a user, we can have multiple addresses stored to our account. And then you'd have all the typical address fields. That's it about the users. But now, let's move on. Talking about products, what do you think would be the main element of a product? Let's say you open up a typical product on a Nike shoes store. It needs a product name, a description, category, maybe a gender who the product is for. A brand, over here it's going to be Nike, but if you want to support multiple brands, you need this field too. Colors, sizes, prices, weight, and many other things. So how would you manage all of these? Well, it's simple. Create a products table and put all of these right into it, right? Well, sure, if you want to break the whole system in a couple of weeks or even days. It's tempting to store all product-related fields in one place, but that structure just doesn't scale. As you can see on the Nike website, a single product can have multiple sizes and colors. So if you want to store that directly inside of the products table, you'd be left with messy structures like sizes 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and colors red, black, white, and so on. These are arrays or comma-separated strings, and they are super hard to query, impossible to index properly, difficult to filter in your catalog, and prone to errors and inconsistencies. But that's not it. Each variant, such as a color or a size, can also have its own pricing. So let's say that a size 9 in red is in stock and costs about $98. Size 10 in white is out of stock, and size 8 in black is on sale at £75. How do you represent all of this in a single row within your products table? You can't. And that's why we need a product variant table to handle things like SKUs, which is the stock keeping unit, sizes, colors, prices, sale prices, quantities, and weights. Because each combination of a color and a size is a distinct variant that must be tracked independently. Okay, you're now ready to create two separate tables. One will be products, and the other one will be products variants. But what if I tell you that we're not done yet? It will be all good until users expect to filter by color, size, gender, price range, or availability. Imagine an SQL query where you say something like select everything from product variants where colors like red and sizes like 9. That may work initially until your data grows. Then it turns into a slow and non-indexed disaster. Good luck scaling that. That's the beauty of having a relationship. A product can belong to multiple collections, for example, new arrivals or basketball, have many images, receive dozens of reviews, and can be sold across different regions or warehouses. Trying to put all of this into a single table means you'll repeat data, you'll hit limits fast, and you'll cry when you need to change something. And that's not the worst part. Let's say you store each color and size into a new row in a products table. You now have 12 rows that say Air Jordan 1 Low with slightly different attributes. Now you need to update the product description. And you're updating it in 12 places. This is called data duplication, and it's the root cause of inconsistency. Okay, I'm done traumatizing you. So what's the right approach? Well, break your data into purposeful, normalized tables. Have a table like products, which is the core table representing the main product entity, like Nike Air Max 90. store general info like its name, description, associated brand, category, and gender, and then have another table called categories, which are used to classify products into hierarchical groups, footwear, sneakers, or something like that. Then you can have another table called brands to store different brand names like Nike, Adidas, and so on, which helps us filter and organize products by brand. You can also have tables for genders, colors, sizes, product images, and product variants, because all of these play their own role. This way, each table has a single responsibility. Data stays clean, and you can scale to hundreds of products, variants, colors, and more. You can also query much faster, filter things out more smoothly, and update more easily, and avoid duplication. In short, if you want to build a robust catalog system that behaves like Amazon, Flipkart, or Nike, design it like a system, not a spreadsheet. So based on all of this info, this is how each one of these tables would look like. Feel free to pause the screen if you want to review it. We have the products, brands, genders, colors, sizes, categories, product images, and finally, product variants. And of course, if your app grows, now you have the structure in place so you know how you can scale it further. For example, if you want to implement reviews on each one of these products, now it should be very simple. You would just add a reviews table that looks like this. And the same thing goes for managing or creating collections like bestsellers or summer essentials. You just have a collections table. And then you can map this with a product so a single product can be part of multiple collections. Hopefully everything so far makes sense. But now we have to dive into the cart. Many beginner tutorials and content creators oversimplify and create a single cart table that looks like this. It has the ID, the user ID, the product variant ID, and the quantity. This seems fine at first, but very quickly it starts breaking as soon as real-world complexity kicks in. If you do the same, you can only store one product per cart because each row now represents a cart with one product. That's not how carts work. If a user adds 3 different items, you now have 3 cart items with repeated user IDs or cart IDs, and there's no actual container tying them together. You've lost a concept of a cart. So a proper way would be to create 2 tables for cart management, a cart table and a cart items table. Doing so, you can keep the cart as a container, and then one cart can have multiple items, each with its own variant and quantity. And as you've learned before, you can also attach a cart to a logged-in user or an anonymous visitor because of the session ID stored in a cookie. Or you can even merge anonymous carts with user carts on login. This will also enable features like save for later or abandoned cart reminders, cart analytics, and so much more. So now you architected users, products, carts, and the next thing are orders. Orders table will follow the same principles as we've discussed so far when creating cart product tables. In this one, you'll have the orders table, which stores each order placed by a user, including the overall status, total amount, and associated shipping and billing addresses. Then there's the order items table, which contains individual items in a given order, capturing quantity and the price at a time of purchase for each product variant. There's also a payments table to track the payment method and status of an order, including transaction details and a timestamp of payment completion. You can also add additional schemas or tables for coupons, maybe to handle all sorts of different discounts, or maybe a wishlist table so that users can add the products they'd like to purchase in the future. Okay, that was quite a database setup, wasn't it? But this really covers everything you'd need to run any e-commerce store. And most stores are more or less built the same way. You could easily extend this later to handle sales management or any other features you'd want. But the important part aren't the features. It's understanding how to design a solid database. Once you get that, you can architect any system you want, no matter how complex it is. All right, enough talking about architecture. Let's put all of this together and start building. And now we are ready to get that database architecture implemented. So as before, head over to your new Devin session and give it access to your repo and choose the agent preview if you want to. Then in the video kit down below, you can find a complete prompt that we can go through together. More or less, it's going to be the same thing that we discussed in the previous lesson. We'll tell Devin who he is. Then we'll tell it to design and implement a robust, normalized database schemas using Drizzle ORM for a scalable e-commerce application. It includes user accounts, product catalog, filters, reviews, orders, and supporting features, all aligned with the industry best practices for long-term scalability and clean code architecture. We tell it about the structure of the application and the additional schemas it can add. And then under tasks, we get a bit more specific. So we tell it to define new schemas for the new entities. It's going to be addresses, products, categories, product variants, and so on. Once again, you don't have to be this descriptive. It can do it on its own if you just list these different things. But I wanted us, while going through the video, to have more or less the same output so that you can better follow along with this course. And then we tell it to use the best data modeling practices, such as the accurate data types for UUIDs, text, and so on, define proper relationships, normalize the structure, and basically do everything else that I explained that our database needs to follow in the previous lesson. The output, of course, are the schemas for each table, Zod-based validations, clean files, foreign keys, and ready for production. So let's submit it and see what it comes up with. And here we are. A couple minutes later, there's a new PR. What I'll do in this case is open up the progress so we can go through it together. First things first, you can see that progress can either be a shell or it can be information on what it did and what is it thinking. So you can use the arrows to move between different steps of the progress of creating this PR. Not just writing the code, but also the decision making and thinking and research and reading, everything that we as developers need to do. Devin is going through that as well. So first things first, it's exploring the e-commerce repo to understand the structure, and it read a couple of files. Then it continued doing that and reading more files. Then it started inspecting the current schema to see what it needs to do. After that, it created a modular schema for the e-commerce application, including filters, brands, categories, collections, and addresses, basically everything we asked it to do. But then it ran into an issue. I'm addressing the relation typing errors caused by dynamic imports in the schema files by replacing them with direct imports of related tables, ensuring proper references. Now, up to this point, ChatGPT would also be able to provide you with the finished code, but actually testing it out in real life, figuring out what the error is, and trying to fix that error without you ever seeing it, well, that's another level. So it went ahead and fixed the import statements and the error that had happened, and then it continued to refine the scripts that we have. It decided to make it modular, and it even created a seeding function that we can use to seed the entire database. After that, it opened several key schema files to verify their contents, and then it's going to proceed to install the dependencies that we need to run this new application. It went through even more debugging and error fixing, and we didn't see any of that, which is amazing. So you can see, for example, here, it corrected the foreign key definition in categories.ts by chaining the onDelete set null method instead of passing it as an object property. See, before it was passing it, but then it chained it. This error likely happened because of a change in a library. So first, maybe it got the info about the previous version of the library, and then it actually corrected itself based on the error that it received. Then it's using its shell to commit the files, doing a couple more changes, and finally, near the end, it verified everything is good, reviewed it, and opened up a PR. So to sum up, it implemented the full modular Drizzle ORM schemas, Zod validation, and a comprehensive seed script, and also opened up a PR. So let's pull that PR open so we can check it out soon. But what I first want to do is actually open it up within my IDE. So just run git pull to pull all the latest changes, and then check out to this new Drizzle schemas branch. Once you're there, you'll be able to see all the new changes. And don't forget to run npm install because some new packages got installed as well. WebStorm is doing that automatically for me. Okay, so what do we have here? Well, if you head over to DB schema, you'll notice that now there are so many more schemas. schemas for collections of products, categories, carts, brands, and so much more. This would take hours to generate on our own, and most likely we would have failed somewhere. If you want, feel free to take some time to browse through all of these newly created files and pay attention to how it approached creating specific fields. Alongside the schemas, there's also one more thing that was generated by Devin, and that is a seeding function. Seeding in databases typically means that we want to fill up the database with some randomized placeholder data, but we still want it to look good. It can be copies of what we believe will be the actual products. In this case, we will be seeding our database with shoes, of course. So this is a fairly complicated seeding function that a couple of years ago, you would just have to write on your own. There's no really other way to do it. You cannot find a copy somewhere on the internet because, every product and every database is different depending on the shoes and the colors and everything. And you couldn't use AI, right? But at the same time, this is so boring to write. If you want to get an explanation of this seed function, you're totally free to take some time to browse through it or ask Junie or ChatGPT to explain it line by line. But really, in simple terms, what's happening here is it's basically creating some generic sets, arrays of data, which then it'll fill the database within once it randomizes it. So it's going to pick a random gender, for example, men, then a random color, for example, red. Then it's going to pick the random size, and then it's going to randomize the collection. Then it's going to randomize the photo, and then it's going to put it all together into a new randomized product. This would take a lot of time to build, and it is super boring. So if there's a top use case for tools like Devin, well, writing seed functions is definitely on top of the list. Okay, there's one thing that I want to modify here though, and that is that we're working with shoes. And shoes are typically not outlined in extra small or extra large. They have some numbers. In Europe, Asia, or the US, the numbers are different, but for now you can stick with the numbers that suit you. You can go with something like 40, 41, 35, or you can use the US numbers, let's say starting from 7 onwards. So I'll do 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And you also need to modify the slug. So I'll do 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. So now we have some sizes. You'll also notice that it's going to randomize the images. That's going to be happening right here. It's going to find a random image from 1 to 15 because we have about 14, 15 images in our public folder. It's going to pick a random extension and then it'll hook it up together and do a static upload. In case you want to upload this image on another image hosting provider platform, you're totally free to change just this part and it's just going to work. But for now, what do you say that we give it a shot? Whenever we change the seed functions, we have to generate new schema migrations. So open up the terminal and run the npm run db generate command. There we go. All of these new tables have been created. 24 tables. I mean, just imagine writing all those tables by hand. And then we want to push those schemas to the database, specifically to NeonDB in this case. Okay, now that we've done that, we are ready to run the seeding script. So if you head over to the package.json, you'll notice that a new script, dbseed, has been created, which basically just runs the seeding file. So let's do just that by running npm run dbseed. This one might take some time, and it'll quickly skip through all of the initial parts, like seeding the filters, seeding the brands, categories, collections, products with variants, but then you'll quickly start seeing a lot of seeding errors. And this will have to be related with finding the randomized image. So it says failed to copy image shoe10.jpg. That's maybe because shoe10.jpg doesn't exist. Or same for shoe2 with this extension, and so on. Don't worry, these are not errors. It just couldn't find that specific version of a randomized image, but it found an alternative. So we're still good to go, because at the end, it says seeded product Nike Air Max 15 with 20 variants and seeding complete. Perfect. Now either open up Drizzle Studio or head back over to NeonDB and reload your tables. If you head over into products, you should be able to see different variations of the Nike Air Maxes with a description. With all of them, you can experience the maximum comfort and performance. They have their own category IDs, gender IDs, brand IDs. All of this has been fully randomized by your seed script. And then they have relations to specific product images and variants. So if you click on some of these relations, for example, to product variants, you'll be able to quickly open a product variant table and see the different variations of this specific shoe that we have, such as the gray 7, gray 9, or red 7 or red 12, with their own randomized prices. This already feels like a real store. And you can also see that they have some images. You cannot open them online because they've been added to a repository statically. So we'll be able to load them within our application. Of course, a more scalable way would be to host them on a platform like Cloudinary. But for now, this is more than enough. So with that in mind, we're good to commit all the new changes. Unfortunately, we cannot see any changes live on our application just yet, but we'll be able to see it in the next lesson once we implement the product listing page, where we'll fetch all of these generated shoes. So for now, let's just go ahead and commit it. Once again, make sure that you are on the correct branch, the one that Devin created, and then go ahead and do git add dot, git commit -m. This commit was all about, well, I just did a small fix on the seeding function. So I'll say fix seeding function sizes, and then I'll do a git push. Back on GitHub, we can see a new feature that we have added to our database, and these are the modular Drizzle schemas, ZAD validation, and seed scripts for our e-commerce app. 88 files changed. That's a lot. In simple words, we have added new schemas for products, variants, categories, brands, images, reviews, and more commerce-specific stuff like cart, cart items, order, order items, and more. Everything that we discussed a couple of lessons ago when we talked about overall database architecture of an e-commerce application. Definitely a huge PR that would take us a lot of time to do on our own. So let's merge this huge PR to main. Great. With that in mind, the majority of the logic for the auth and databases and everything e-commerce related has been implemented. And in the next lesson, we'll finally be able to see it on our page, because we'll develop a product listing page. So let's do that next. Okay, the exciting stuff is about to come. Now that we have done a lot of logic and technical implementation, we can actually visualize it on the screen. At least we'll be able to after this next feature implementation, and that is the product listing page. So feel free to take a screenshot of this design page, or also provide a full design screenshot in the video kit down below, and then head over into a new Devin session and feed it this image that you have alongside the prompt that you can find in the video kit down below. The objective this time is to build a product listing page for the Nike e-commerce websites that supports filterable and sortable product listings. Product data must render server-side, this is very important, using URL query parameters, not using state management. And then the filter and sort UI must be built using client components only, that sync state to the URL without performing any data fetching themselves. So once again, you are the architect here, and you're directing how this should be built. The design, as before, is attached. The structure of the application is here as well. And then the tasks are to create the server rendered product page and some client page filters, which will be available on the sidebar. That's going to be the filters UI, the sort UI, query utilities, and then we can also make it responsive, make it navigate to other pages, and also manage the state of the filters through the URL bar in real Next.js way. Perfect. So let's go ahead and submit it and see what it comes up with. And there we go. I think this was the quickest one yet. In only 6 minutes, it created a complete server-side rendered products page with client-side rendered filters and sort with URL syncing. This is exactly what I wanted to do. Then it took some time to check it out and verify it locally. So at the end of the day, it looks something like this. But of course, we won't just look at the screenshots, we'll actually check it out locally. So let me open up this PR first. Then, as usual, open up your IDE and do a git pull. Then open up your Git interface and check out to this new branch. You can also run npm install to install the new packages that have been added to our repo, and then we can check out the changes. We can take a look at the Files Change tab right here in GitHub to see exactly which files got changed. It's of course the products page, and then a couple of extra components, such as the filters, the navbar got modified a bit, and then the sort, as well as the query.ts, which contains all of the querying utility functions. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So let's start from the main deal, and that is the products page. It is server-side rendered. We can see that because it doesn't contain any use client directive at the top, and it is conveniently importing all three important components, such as card, filters, and sort. It has all the proper types, such as the search params and information about the product, and it even rendered a couple of mock products so far. These mock products still contain the ML and XL sizes. That's totally okay because later on we'll replace this with the real data. So for now, we can just collapse it. That's totally okay. If you head over to the part where the actual page starts, you can see that we're filtering and sorting different products. And then here's the JSX where we actually render both the filters and the sorts as well as the cards. Now, this doesn't look super straightforward. We have a lot of sorting and filtering logic, and a bit of string modification right here when it comes to creating labels. So I think Devin did the best job possible here. Maybe we could have extracted these somewhere else, but this is totally okay. Now let's go ahead and check out these two client components. The filters, which use the router and the path name to change the search params, that is good. And we have all of the different sizes, genders, colors, and so on. And then if you check out the actual filter, you can see that you can open it up. And then we're mapping over through all the options, which are checkboxes that you can click and select a specific option, which then calls the on toggle, which simply pushes the URL to update the selected filter. This is looking good. And the same thing goes for sorts. Instead of filtering, we simply can select different options and then apply a sorting mechanism. Of course, all of these are happening within utils. So if you head over to utils query.ts, here you can see how we're stringifying the query to be able to use it, or how we're updating different params by first getting the current query, then getting the object entries and mapping over all the properties and either deleting them or adding some new properties, as you can see right here. So let's actually check it on localhost 3000. And I think it actually fixed the navbar. So if you click men, women, or kids, it'll actually re-navigate you to this new product listings page /products with the filter already applied. That's cool. So if I uncheck it, you can see that all the shoes are here. Looks like one has a broken image, which I don't necessarily mind because we're going to replace this with the real products that we seeded anyway. The most important thing right now is that the filters and sorts work. So if I sort it by women, this works. If I do a small size, that works as well. Perfect. We can choose black. Okay, now this is of course not an issue on the filtering side, but just the images related to these products. Maybe they're marked black. You can see 6 colors right here, but the one in the image is not actually black. There we go. These ones are gray. And then if we want to go by prices, looks like Nike doesn't sell anything super cheap. And then if you want to have images, you want to go over $100. So here we have some more expensive ones. And then right here over 150, these are the most expensive. So filters are working perfectly. And if we try to filter it by price, high to low, that works. Low to high works as well. And by newest and featured, that works as well. The only thing I can see is we're missing a bit of padding right here at the bottom and maybe this image. So let's go ahead and fix that. By heading over to the products page, we can take a look at this mock data and just take a look at the last image. I think that's the last one right here. So we can set it to shoe 5, or we can pick one that is actual image from shoes. Maybe let's do shoe 3.webp. And let's add a bit of padding to all of these shoes. So I think that is right here. Maybe I'll add a padding bottom of about 6. There we go. So now all of the shoes are here and it's looking great. This tab also displays the correct number. The filters are nicely positioned. Sorting is also nicely positioned and everything is actually hyperlinked. So this is already starting to feel like a real application. Let me actually inspect it and see how it looks on mobile. Okay, if we navigate over to the products page right now, oh my God. I mean, this actually works and it's already filtered. So I can see the filters here in a little pill. And if I clear it, that actually works. And then the filters actually open up from a toggleable left sidebar where you can select specific things. It automatically collapses and you can just see the changes. This is absolutely crazy. So Devin really killed it with this PR. So let's go ahead and make our little commit by saying git add dot git commit -m, apply small fixes, and then git push. This now allows us to come back to this PR within the GitHub interface, and we can get ready to get it merged. Once again, I'm super happy with this PR, so let's go ahead and happily merge it. And back within WebStorm, let's go ahead and pull it and navigate back to the main branch to have all the latest changes. And you can do a pull again now that you're in the main branch. Wonderful. This was great. Now in the next lesson, we'll focus on implementing product actions. These will allow us to fetch the actual products so we can display them on the products page. Okay, the UI is there, but now we want to focus on actually fetching real products from the database and still make sure that sorting and filtering works. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about just toggling on or off or sorting a mock 4-product array. I'm talking about querying a real performant database. And to do that, we gotta create some product actions. So within the video kit down below, you can find the complete prompt and let's go through it together. The objective is to implement a high-performance backend server action to fetch products with full filtering, search, sorting, and pagination support. We implemented that work on the front end, but now it's time to power this up on the backend. For this, we will use Next.js server actions with Drizzle ORM and Postgres. We'll place the main logic in products.ts, and the query parsing helpers are already here. Query should support multiple product variants, color-specific images, and generic images as well, and we will render all products server-side using the card component. Now here's the key part. All queries must be optimized to minimize joins and avoid N+1 queries. You are now speaking as a database architect, and you need to tell it to do it in an optimized way. Now, getting to the tasks themselves, the goal is to implement the get all products server action, the get individual product server action, and then we want to update the products page and the queries page to accommodate those changes. Basically, we need to get 2 server actions to fetch all products and to fetch product details. So let's go ahead and submit it. And there we go. Our latest PR is right here. Feature products, server actions, plus query utils, plus SSR products page. It says that it implemented the product server actions, query parsing, and updated the products page for server-side rendering. So let's go ahead and check it out. The changes are in product, query, and products page. Heading back over here, I'll run a git pull, and then I'll open up my Git interface and navigate over to product actions by checking out that branch. Then we can check out the code, and the code is right here within product actions. Here it implemented the actions to fetch all products, as well as to fetch an individual product. These are the only 2 actions. And then it made the actual changes within the products page. So that is right here, where instead of having a fake dummy data, it actually is trying to fetch all products right here, and then get the products and the total count. So let's see whether it successfully does that. If I head over to localhost 3000/products, it looks like we get an error saying failed query for selecting these products. Now, there are 3 choices that we can make right here. The first one is to copy this full error and then paste it over to Devin and ask it to fix it. But if you think about it, why didn't Devin fix this error on its own? If it can do that, right? It runs across different errors and then fixes it so that we don't have to. Well, the reason that it didn't fix this error is that it happened on the backend side, and it happened specifically for our environment variables. But Devin doesn't have access to our envs, so it didn't encounter this error before we did. It couldn't have actually fixed it. So instead of providing this specific error and ask it to fix it, we can say something like, there are issues rendering the product listing page. We could maybe give it just the start of that error so it knows a bit of what we're talking about. Failed query, select products, and so on. You know, the first choice would have been to just pass the current error in its entirety and ask it to fix it. But we're going to go a step further. We're going to anticipate that there are going to be future errors, and we want Devin to be able to encounter them and automatically fix them. And it can only do that if it has access to our environment variable. In an ideal case, this would be a staging environment variable. So if Devin has it, nothing can go wrong and it cannot mess up your production application. If that is the case, you can go ahead and give the variable to it. So you can say, here is my database URL, use it, and if you encounter some more bugs, fix them along the way. And the third choice would be not to give it the URL, but rather to try to fix all of these issues on our own. In this case, I want to see how Devin handles it. So let's go ahead and speak with it. This is actually one of the first times where Devin didn't one-shot the whole feature that we asked it to do. So of course, there's some natural back and forth communication for it to implement this feature properly. So let's wait a bit and see what it comes up with. In a couple of seconds, Devin said that it'll set the database URL to our Neon URL. It'll reproduce the failing products query locally and then push the fixes shortly. I mean, a couple of years ago, or even a couple of months ago, it would be almost impossible to imagine that some kind of a tool would immediately do this for us. It's doing back and forth debugging, refactoring, bug fixing, and it's finally pushing it into a PR for us to review. Just unimaginable. And here's the response. It says, quick update. The products page is now fixed and rendering correctly against our Neon DB. Well, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. In this case, it says what it changed. Okay, that's great. What I care more about is the verification, how it knows that it's actually working. It says it started the dev server with our database URL and navigated to the products page. And the page indeed does render without errors. Cards names show, gender-based subtitle, primary images. It all works. It pushed it. Checks are green. That is great to hear. And it even gave us a screenshot of how it looks like. This is great. But just to verify it, let's go ahead and pull the changes locally and see how it feels. Back within our application, I will run git pull. We are already on the updated branch, so it looks like it updated the product.ts. And then if we move over to localhost, the product page now loads. Looks like we have a lot of great products. Unfortunately for us, it looks like the seeding function hasn't seeded the images properly. You can see the names actually are different, which is great. The prices are also different. They range within different amounts for different variations of the products. It's just the images that are the same. We can definitely look into that in the future, but for now, the sorting seems to be working well. This is the highest paid product. In total, we have 6, 12, and 15 products. So if we try to filter it by men, oh, it looks like we still have 15. So in this case, it looks like the filtering isn't working, neither by gender, size, color, or the price. So that's definitely something we have to look into. So getting back to Devin, let's just tell it to fix it as it did so far. So say the products page now loads, but the filters aren't working. Fix the filters, and I'll press enter. And just like that, filters are fixed. I mean, once again, I'm completely blown away by the fact that we tell it what's wrong, it actually tests it, fixes it, and calls it a day. It says the issue was parsing bracketed array parameters like gender and normalizing slugs to lowercase. So it even explained it. And then it checked it out, and it actually proved to us that it's working by passing a screenshot. This is, I mean, I cannot make this up. I've seen a lot of people use Devin on smaller use cases, especially some YouTubers using them on small applications. But this is the first time in person that I'm seeing it properly debug and work within a medium to large complex e-commerce application. And I can only praise it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's actually test it out locally. So I'll pull all the changes and then head back to our application. The products are here. Let's try to filter them. I'll first go for men. Looks like there are 5 shoes for men. There are 5 shoes for women. And there's 5 shoes that are unisex. This could point to the fact that maybe it's not working, or it could be a coincidence that actually 15 shoes were separated by 5 across all 3 genders. We can test it further by extra small, small, medium. This seems to be working very well. But of course, we'll know it better once we actually can open up this product and view the product details, because then we'll know whether this product, whether the shoe is actually for men or not. If we filter it by color, looks like that works as well. And again, you cannot really see it right now because the photos are the same. The prices we are seeing though. So if we filter it maybe here, you can see that now it's in the hundreds range. But if we put it over 150, then it's only the shoes that are over 150. So this is actually working perfectly. The last thing that I would do here is to get it to fix our seeding function to make sure that each product has a unique image. So let's fix that seeding function. First, you want to head over to your database console, head over under SQL editor, and then type this command: drop schema public cascade and create schema public. This will simply drop the entire database so we can clean it up and start from scratch. So I'll run it. And you can see drop cascades to 29 other objects. And if you look at the table, it'll basically be completely clean. Then you have to head back over to the code base and remove the Drizzle folder that contains the current migrations. So just delete it. And then let's run a command from our package.json. That's going to be npm run db generate. And then we also have to run npm run db push. If you do that, all the changes are applied. And now if you reload, you'll see that we have all of these tables right here, but they're completely empty. So the last thing in this session that we can ask Devin is to fix up the seeding function so that each product has its own image. It says right here that exceeding 5 ACUs can reduce Devin performance. And right now, for this session, we're about 6 ACUs. These are the units that measure how much processing power we spent on generating this code. So right now we're at the upper limit, but it's okay as this is the last thing that we wanted to do within this specific feature. I'll say something like modify the seeding function and ensure that it seeds the database with 15 unique products, and each of them has to have a unique image coming from /public/shoes folder. Right now, all the images are the same. Just fix that part. Okay, let's see how that goes. Looks like there's a little follow-up here. It said seed updated for unique product images. Just to verify 15 unique products, which option do you prefer? To truncate or to modify seed to skip the existing products? In this case, either option is fine, but I'll just select one. Okay, the response just came in and Devin said, all set. The seeding is fixed and verified. I updated the seed.ts to ensure that each of the 15 products has a unique image from public shoes and removed the per variant random image creation. It verified it, updated the PR, and that's it. It even gave us a screenshot, and this is looking amazing. So back within our IDE, just go ahead and pull the latest changes by running git pull. And before we can check it out on local, we have to once again delete everything from our database. That's because when Devin ran the seed function, it was referring to the previously seeded images. So we've got to delete them, and then the seed function will create new seeded images within our local environment. So to do that, first head over to Neon console under the SQL editor and then run the drop schema public cascade create schema public command. Once you do that, your database will be deleted. Don't forget to also delete the Drizzle folder and also delete the static folder that was created for us in the latest PR. Once you do that, we are ready to regenerate the database. You already know the drill. First, go ahead and run npm run db generate. Then after that, run npm run db push. And finally, now that we have our new products in, go ahead and run db seed this will now seed it locally with fixed images. As you can see, seeded product Nike Air 1, 2, 3, 4 with many different variants and with proper images. So if you head back over to your localhost 3000/products, just check this out. We get all of the different shoe images, and this now really feels like a production-ready e-commerce website. Also, this is a little detail, but notice how the left side filters tab actually floats as the right side content moves, and then it comes to the bottom. Like, even these little interactions are done properly. This is amazing. And the filtering works as well. If you try to filter by specific colors, you'll see that we get all of the same image. That is not a bug. It's just that our seeding function seeded all the different product variants to have the same image, but these are indeed supposed to be different colors. And you can see the prices works as well. So this is so amazing to see. With that in mind, let's go ahead and commit and push it. I'll run git add dot git commit -m finalize seed function and then push it. Then heading back over to our GitHub interface, and you can see that if you want to test it, you might need to reset and reseed the database using npm run seed, navigate through products with various filter combinations, test direct URLs with different parameters to see whether it applies the filtering through params, and then verify performance with the browser network tab. We've already tested most of these things and everything is working properly. And finally, we are ready to merge it. Once you do that, back within our code, make sure to check out over to the main branch by running git checkout main or just using the interface, and then just run git pull to pull the latest changes. So now back on localhost, we have all of the latest changes, but this time on main. Great work coming this far into the course. I think this is the point where it all really started coming together. In this lesson, let's dive right into creating our product details page. So now that we can open up all the products individually from the product listings, let's actually display their details, such as this neat gallery to show all of the product images, the title, description, collection, price, and even different variations, colors, and sizes. We can also display the product details, and finally, the You Might Also Like section. And again, this is about a day of work, especially if you want to hook up the logic. And hopefully, we'll get it done in a couple of minutes. So as usual, just to speed up the process a bit, I provided the complete prompt in the video kit down below, alongside the design image that you have to provide alongside the prompt so it knows what to generate. The goal here is to build a product details page for the Nike e-commerce app that renders a rich product gallery, color and size selectors, and product metadata. The page must be pixel perfect to the attached desktop design and strictly responsive across mobile and tablet devices. It should open when a user clicks on product card and feel uniform with the rest of the site. Now, here are a couple of strict requirements. The entire page must be server rendered. Only the interactions and dynamic UI parts that require client-side state, like the gallery, swatches, and size picker, must be placed in isolated client components under the components folder. It also needs to follow the provided design screenshots exactly. No deviations. Do gallery, collapsible section, product information UI as is, strictly follow the same layout, and code must be super clean. We give it more info about the structure and then specify the exact tasks. So the goal is, in simple words, to implement the product details page, which is going to be based on the dynamic ID param that we'll use to load first the static mock data, but later on real product data. And then this page needs to be composed out of these smaller components, such as the product gallery, the color and variant pickers, size pickers, product metadata, You Might Also Like section, responsiveness, accessibility, and more. So make sure that you provide access to this repo, and you can select a agent preview. Make sure that you also provided this image right here, and then let's submit it and see what it comes up with. Now, very quickly, we got the server render product details page PR, and then it said it's implemented and ready for review. And review we will, because from the screenshot, it doesn't look so good. At least the gallery doesn't. The right side is spot on, But the gallery is broken, and if this right here is the color picker, then it's not where it's supposed to be. So let's prompt it to fix it. Make sure the gallery looks exactly like it does on the provided design. What you can do is once again provide a screenshot of this entire section and forward it to it, and that the color picker is above the size selector. I tried to be as brief as possible in my request. So let's see how it goes. And the update is complete. I like how Devin immediately gives us a screenshot of whatever it develops so we can see whether it's looking good or whether we have to do a little follow-up to get it exactly looking how we want. And now the color picker is right above the size selector, matching the design, and the gallery layout is aligned on the left. Sure, we can still modify the height of this main image, but other than that, this is looking good to me. So let's go ahead and test it out on localhost. Back within my WebStorm, I'll run git pull to pull the latest changes, and I will check out to this new branch that is the product details page. Once you check out to it, you can run npm install to install all of the recent packages. It most likely needed something for the gallery. And now if you head over to app, root, products, ID, you'll notice that now there's a new product ID page rendering one mock product. For now, we'll collapse it. And you also see some recommendations for other products below that specific shoe. Then we are fetching all the data using the params, and then fetching the product data and displaying it right here. Finally, let's see where that product image is. We have the header, and below the header on the left, there should be a product image. There we go. Product gallery is a new component of its own. So if you head over to it, you'll notice that it is a use client component exactly as we requested. So now we just need to fix the height of the main image. I believe that is this one right here. To fix this broken layout, I think we can remove this aspect square on this div, and instead, after the full width, give it a defined height of maybe 500 pixels. If you do that and come back, you can see that now the image fits much nicer, and I can even zoom it in a bit. And you can see that you can switch between different images. You also can switch between the images here. And keep in mind, this is so crazy that right now you're just switching between the images of a specific color. So in this case, most likely this will be a black shoe. And right now, this is of course a different shoe, but in the real world application, you would have this shoe at all the different angles, from the top, from the bottom, the sole, and everything. Same thing for this shoe right here. So you can see different angles of a different color of a shoe, and you can explore all the different colors for a specific shoe product. I mean, just keep that in mind. It's absolutely crazy. Okay, now that this is looking good, I noticed that we have two sets of chevrons. These are the icons that allow you to move left and right. We want to remove the ones from the bottom because they're non-functional. So just find this chevron left and right. We want to find the one that is at the bottom. We want to comment out these ones just to make sure that they are the ones. So that is these two divs right here, chevron left and chevron right. So let me remove it. There we go. Now we only have the left and right, and we can switch between all of the colors and see more images within a specific color gallery. You can also select a size. You can see that all the sizes are here, and very soon we'll be able to add it to the bag or favorite it. Now, if you scroll down, you can see the full product details of that product, as well as the shipping and returns, and even the reviews. And it all works nicely. And at the bottom, you even have the "you might also like" shoe recommendations. This is absolutely out of this world. Keep in mind that it also implemented this little breadcrumb navigation so that you can immediately navigate back to the homepage or to the products page. This is crazy. And if you head over to a specific section, like women, you can now actually navigate over to a specific shoe product details page. I am amazed. So with that in mind, there's nothing left for us to do here, but just go ahead and get it merged. I'll once again do a very quick git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say small fixes to the layout, because that's really the only thing we've done. and then run a git push. I'll then go ahead and open up this PR, and we can take a look at what we did. Under files changed, you can see that we implemented the product details page. We have the ID pointing to that product from the products page. We also have the collapsible section for the reviews, the details, and more, color swatches, the index to export these components, the product gallery, the size picker, the variants of different products, and updates to the package.json, where we just updated the version of Lucid React. And when I said we did these things, I really meant Devin did them. And once again, that's just out of this world. And with that in mind, we are ready to get this PR merged. So let me do just that. And with that, we are ready to implement the logical part of the data fetching of a specific product in our next lesson, where we will remove the mock data and fetch real product data for each one of these products from the product listing page. So let's do that next. Okay, let's hook up our product page with real data. So the goal now, as per the prompt that you can find in the video kit down below, is to build a fully integrated product details page in a Nike e-commerce app using real backend data from existing schemas. This product details page must fetch correct products when a user clicks on a product card, show reviews and recommended products via server actions wrapped in suspense so that it is non-blocking. This is a very cool feature in Next.js, so I'm very excited to see how Devin handles it. Then it needs to handle products, variants, and image relations correctly with no shortcuts or buggy logic, and it needs to gracefully render a not found block if a specific product doesn't exist. In this case, the UI is already done, so we don't need to mention this. When it comes to the structure, the Next.js app router with server component, we already have it. For backend, you already know the drill. And now the goal is to focus on the tasks. Basically, it needs to refine the get product server action so we can fetch all of the different information and return it so we can then display it on the front end. Implement the get product reviews server action, the get recommended product server action, and then finally, it needs to hook it all up within the page.tsx. That's our product details page. Everything else is exactly as it was in the previous one. We just need to make sure that it still keeps the rest of the UI, but now integrates it with real data. Don't forget to add eCommerce as your repo of choice, and you can choose the agent preview. And let's continue. Okay, Devin started building a comprehensive product details page as requested, but I think this is the first time that I'm seeing its confidence rated as low. Okay, that's good, but what I actually like about it is that it didn't proceed with that low confidence. Instead, it created a plan, and it's asking us for questions. So some of the questions include things like reviews approval. The schema lacks an approval flag. Should we treat all reviews as approved for now? The recommendation priority, should we prefer category, brand, gender with case-based ordering? And then PDP pricing source. Should we use the product default variant or minimum price variant? So these are some questions that we have to give replies to or just click confirm. I like how in the questions themselves, it doesn't necessarily require us to respond with words. It just asks yes or no questions. And then if we want to say no, then we can provide additional information. But these questions are super detailed and intricate that either way is totally fine with me. So the default option that is suggested for all three options is great. So in this case, we can just go ahead and click confirm. Hopefully this will get its confidence higher so it can actually develop the feature. And just like that, we got our next PR back. It's the product details page with the backend integrated. The PR is ready for us to review. This time we're not getting back any screenshots because this requires local testing. So we can either provide a database URL as we did before, or we can just go ahead and test it locally, which is exactly what I'll do. I'll just run git pull to pull the latest changes. Then I'll check out to the new PDP backend integration branch, install some new packages by running npm install if there were any, but I think WebStorm didn't notice me, so I don't think there are. And we are ready to test it out. Back on our homepage, we can see some shoes. We can navigate over to the product listing page to see the new real shoes that we have seeded our database with. Then, if you now click on one of these shoes, you should be able to see it. And yep, you can see that the correct shoe with the same image and title actually opens up. Let's go with this crazy Spider-Man-like shoe. Yep, it opens up. It's a Nike Air Max 10. It's a men's shoe, and you can see that it only has one image. Now, in this case, because we implemented a crazy seeding function, it looks like it created so many different color variants, but unfortunately, we didn't change the actual images for each one of these color variants, so we're just left off with a couple of the same shoe. But I think you can already imagine how this would work in a real-world application, where each one of these would be a different color variation of the shoe, and then if you had multiple images from different angles for each one of these color variants, you'd be able to check out exactly how it looks like. You can also select different sizes. The product details and everything is now coming directly from our API. And then we also have the You Might Also Like section, where we have other shoes coming from our database, and now you can actually traverse through the application by selecting different shoes. So let's check it out and see how it actually works within our codebase. If you head over to Source, App, Root, and then the Product ID Details page, you'll see that it's using all the proper Next.js logic, such as getting the params through the props and then getting the ID from it, and then in just a single line, it is fetching all the product details by passing over that ID. So let's take a look at exactly how this Get Product Details server action works. You can see that it's approached it in a way that it's calling the database and it's selecting specific fields that it wants to retrieve from the database, such as basically everything that it needs to display. It's getting it from the products table, and then it's using the left join to join the brands, categories, genders, and all the others table together so we can finally get all the info for that specific product ID. And then it just returns it over right here in a format that is very JavaScript friendly, that we can easily use as a JavaScript object on the front end to display all of these pieces of information. To write all of this by hand would take days. The code is not simple, yet it is made simple to understand and it is properly typed, so we can always know what to expect. So the last thing remaining for us to do is to just merge this PR. A PR where we replace the mock data in the product details page with real backend integration. And it is all fully functional. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get it merged. And then if you head back over to your application, you can run git pull. And then finally, check out to the main branch. Oh, run a git pull there just to be safe. And now if you head back over to the localhost 3000, you can see the full application. Let's just quickly manually navigate over to the sign up just to remember how it looks like. There we go. It is perfect. There's also the sign in. So now we can once again sign up. Since we wiped the database a couple of times, you have to create a new account. So I'll do just that and sign up. Oh, and now that I'm looking at the homepage, it seems that it's still rendering the fake mock products, unlike the product listing page that fetches the real ones from the database. So just to make sure that we don't lose our coding muscle, it's always good from time to time to also try doing something on your own. So back within our application, we can do this on main, that's totally okay. You can head over to the homepage, and right here at the top, you can delete the mock products that are there. And instead of that, we can copy what we have in the products page where we're fetching all of the products. So right here, you can copy this line that says const products and total count is a way to get all products, and you can just paste it right here. Make sure to import the get all products from the products action. So right here, I'll say products coming from lib actions product, and it's accepting something known as a parsed right into it. And this parsed is actually the filters. In this case, I don't think we have to pass any filters, but we can pass just the limit of like 6 products that we can display on the homepage. So let me see where the limit is. There we go. Limit is just filters.limit. So what you can do is just head back over to the homepage and pass an object of filters where the limit will be set to something like 6 or 12. You can do whatever you want. But alongside the limit, it looks like the current get all products is implemented only for the product listing page, where there must be some other things, like the gender slags, size slags, color slags, and 4 more. So what we can do instead is head over into the get all products, head over into the normalized product filters type, and then just make all of these optional. So I'll just select the ending of all of these things, and I'll just make every single one optional. And then if you head back over to get all products, you can also just add a question mark on these filters to make sure that it doesn't break in case it doesn't encounter a specific filter. So I'll just add them right here and here. See, even if you're developing with AI, you still need to be able to know how to traverse your code base and understand what it is doing. In this case, it looks like it's doing a comparison of something that could possibly undefined with 0. So that's why it's complaining about it. So I'll say either this or 0 if it doesn't exist. Perfect. Now, if you head back over here, it doesn't complain anymore. We're just getting all products. And the only thing we care about is just getting 6 products. Doesn't matter which they are. We can remove the user request and the total count. And now we have to change the way that we're mapping through the product. Let's see how we're doing it in the products page. We say products.map, and then we figure out how to render the price and then render the product card. What I'll do in this case is I'll just copy this specific products map, and then I'll use it for the homepage as well, because it's updated and it contains the new way of how we're rendering the products. So I'll just replace the one on the homepage right here. Oh, and it looks like I missed adding question marks in a couple of places within the product.ts actions. So if I head back, I think that part is right here. There we go, the price ranges. And now if you get back, take a look at that. Even our homepage has 6 latest shoes displayed right here, and you can click on them to be able to visit their product details pages. Not only that, we can now traverse to the product listing page by clicking one of the categories at the top and immediately be able to filter and sort through all of these different shoes. Everything is also hyperlinked, so if you clicked on the logo at the top or some other links, you'll be redirected to different parts of the screen. The footer is looking great as well. And don't forget that there is now a product details page, which is fully functional. Even though it looks like the same image is repeated, these are actually different variations of the products. This is actually looking amazing. It is looking very close to a complete, fully functional Nike e-commerce website. And developing all of this might have looked smooth on your screen while you were watching me do it. But let's be honest, it wasn't totally effortless. You still had to write quality prompts, tweak them if needed, follow up with Devin to fix stuff, and finally merge everything in. And just reading and understanding the entire code base like this is already a big skill on its own. Because if you don't really know what's being generated, that's not development. That's what many people call vibe coding. What you did today, that was actual AI-enhanced development. So what's next? Well, dig into this database. Don't just trust it. Understand it fully. And if you're stuck, ask Devin. And if you're still confused, ping me on Discord or email, or just join jsmastery.com and I'll be glad to help you out. This is the new era of development. And the better you get at writing it, the further you'll go. Now, the next big piece will be the cart management, where you can manage the guest sessions that we have implemented the logic for and the full Stripe integration. Since we already covered a lot of stuff here on YouTube, I'll be covering these additional sessions as part of the jsmastery.com Pro Circle. And look, you might be thinking, hold on, without cart management or checkout, is this really e-commerce? Totally fair. And that's exactly why the next step is just 1 or 2 more Devin prompts away. Devin has an integration with Stripe MCP, which makes it ridiculously easy to plug in a real checkout flow. So yes, what you build is the backbone of a real store. You're just a couple of steps away from being production ready. So try this on your own. See if you actually learn how to prompt properly and give it a shot. And if you want to go way deeper into this AI-powered workflow, from Stripe MCPs to advanced integrations, we're now working on a full AI development course. The waitlist is open, so if you're interested, you can find the link somewhere in the video kit down below. But just think about what you pulled off today. In a few hours, you built a full stack e-commerce application from scratch. Devin handled the repetitive work, and you stayed in control, making the real calls. So, will AI replace developers? Well, you let me know. You just watched me build this application with the help of AI. So, I'm curious, what do you think? Are you excited about this AI-powered workflow? And have you tried some AI in your own workflows? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll be glad to read them all out and respond. In my opinion, the future of coding is collaborative, not just with teammates, but also with AI. And you've just seen how powerful and honestly fun it can be. If you like this one, check out jsmastery.com because there we're diving even deeper. A lot of great stuff is coming up, some of it AI powered, and some of it fully foundational so you'll learn everything in depth. One of those courses is the backend course soon coming up on jsmastery.com. So definitely stay up to date regarding that. Once again, thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, keep coding smarter. I'll see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day.